Chapter 391. However, the light refracted by the jade-textured silk threads was able to hide Lin Yuan's exposed chin and forehead by the halo. The mask had two jade-textured wood protrusions at the ears, which looked like two dragon horns. It immediately gave Lin Yuan a feeling of maturity and evil. The mask followed the curve of Lin Yuan's chin, making it impossible to tell his age. He looked at the completely jade-textured table next to him and saw the effect of the mask based on the light and shadow reflected on the table. Lin Yuan gave Hu Quan a thumbs up and praised him. "Uncle Hu, your spirit craftsman skills are truly marvelous and superb." Hu Quan chuckled when he heard Lin Yuan's praise. "It's not good for you to show your face in public when you're building a private force. With this mask, it'll be much more convenient. The jade threads on your mask are the patterns of the majestic city in the clouds. When the time comes, I'll make something similar to this mask. I'll use the jade threads to outline some white cloud patterns. It'll be convenient for others to bring it along when they go out to do things." Lin Yuan nodded and asked, "Uncle Hu, is there enough completely jade-textured wood in the manor?" Hu Quan thought for a moment and said, "In addition to the 4 pieces of completely jade-textured green elm, I'll have to make a fortune, longevity, and happiness bed, as well as a mask to weave." Before the new year, there was no shortage of completely jade-textured wood. In the past 2 days, I went to count the completely jade-textured wood fragments that I had previously stored and found that there were too many of them. It's not enough to supply the goods to the Listening Heron merchant house. I can rely on this fantasy breed wood weaving house centipede to make jade-textured silk threads to weave some objects. I found a total of 27 spirit craftsmen to prepare the items for Listen. These spirit craftsmen have already started working overtime at the Spirit Craftsmen Association. The manufactured items are all placed in my private warehouse at the Spirit Craftsman Chamber of Commerce. See when it's appropriate to send these items to Listen. He planned to go out in a while and use the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to set up spatial nodes everywhere in the royal capital. Back in his house, he had used an ethereal jellyfish's tentacle to set up a spatial node. He now had 29 ethereal jellyfish tentacles, so he could only set up a total of 29 spatial nodes in the royal capital. Lin Yuan did not intend to set up so many spatial nodes at once. However, he felt that he needed to go to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's location in the royal capital to set up a spatial node. Therefore, Lin Yuan said, "That's right. Uncle Hu, I'm going to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in a while. I can bring these objects made of completely jade-textured wood powder to Listen." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan replied, "That's right. In that case, I'll get a Class 3 spirit craftsman to take these objects made of completely jade-textured powder out of my private warehouse now. Then, I'll put it in a platinum phase storage box and send it over." Hu Quan then called the Class 3 spirit craftsman who was rushing to make items in the Spirit Craftsman Association. From Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan could clearly hear how much authority he had in the Spirit Craftsman Association after becoming a Class 5 spirit craftsman. After becoming a Class 5 spirit craftsman, as long as Hu Quan did not go too far, he could already deploy the Spirit Craftsman Association's resources to a certain extent. Hu Quan hung up the phone and was silent for a moment before speaking to Lin Yuan very seriously. "Young master, I want to rope in a group of Class 3 spirit craftsmen and set up an organization under your private faction, Sky City. What do you think?" After hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan gestured for Hu Quan to continue talking about his plan. Although Lin Yuan did not express his opinion, he was very supportive of Hu Quan wanting to rope in a group of Class 3 spirit craftsmen. He was very supportive of setting up an organization under his private faction. If Lin Yuan wanted to build a sky city on the floating island Whale's Back, he would need a large number of spirit craftsmen to work for him. Even if Hu Quan, a Class 5 spirit craftsman, worked himself to death, he would obviously not be able to complete the construction of the huge sky city. Therefore, if Hu Quan could gather a large number of Class 3 spirit craftsmen under him, it would obviously be of great use to Lin Yuan's future construction of the sky city. Hu Quan very seriously told Lin Yuan about his plan. This time, I'm looking for Class 3 Spirit Craftsman in the Spirit Craftsman Association to process items in my private name. Many Class 3 Spirit Craftsmen said that if they can learn Spirit Craftsman skills from me, they are willing to attach themselves to me without charging any fees. So I think this is an opportunity. At this point, Hu Quan's eyes clearly revealed something called ambition. Most Class 5 Spirit Craftsmen in the Spirit Craftsman Association choose to be alone or become distinguished guests of the veteran factions. There are many Class 3 and Class 4 Spirit Craftsmen in the Spirit Craftsman Association, but there has never been a Class 5 Spirit Craftsman to use this power. If I can attract these Class 3 and Class 4 Spirit Craftsmen, not only will I be able to earn money for us in the future development. At the same time, no matter what we want to build in the future, we no longer need to worry about manpower. Lin Yuan could hear from Hu Quan's words that he had always been thinking about this big family. Of course, a large part of this was because Hu Quan had a new goal and ambition after becoming a Class 5 creation master. It was not a bad thing to have ambition, as it could urge people to make progress. Lin Yuan had always been in favor of Hu Quan's idea, so he naturally would not object to it. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and said, "Uncle Hu, your spirit craftsmanship is superb. Uncle Hu, your spirit craftsmanship is superb. Why don't you establish a heavenly craft pavilion? Uncle Hu, just tell me how many resources you need to spend to set up the heavenly craft pavilion. I will fully support it." Hu Quan burst into laughter. Heavenly Craft Pavilion is good, Heavenly Craft Pavilion is good. Young master, I won't let you down when I develop the Heavenly Craft Pavilion. In a short while, the Class 3 Spirit Craftsman Hu Quan had named arrived at the entrance of the mansion. Hu Quan went straight to the door and took the platinum face storage box containing the objects made of completely jade-textured powder and handed it to Lin Yuan. After Lin Yuan received the platinum face storage box, he stored it in his amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. Just as Lin Yuan was about to go out, the mother of Bloodbath, which was looking at the fish in front of the fish tank, said, "Lin Yuan, wait for me for a while. Lin Yuan, wait for me. I will go out with you. Old Hu, make a mask for me too. I'll take it with me." After saying that, the mother of Bloodbath pulled Lin Yuan to stand beside the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. It let Lin Yuan watch the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life carps swimming in the red sandalwood longevity fish tank with it. Today's first chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 392. There were always amazing things appearing in the manor. The people in the manor were already used to it and were no longer as surprised as they were at first. Lin Yuan was a little puzzled. Why was the mother of Bloodbath staring at the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life carps? Suddenly, a bad thought flashed in his mind. Could the mother of Bloodbath be greedy for fish? At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath spoke. "Lin Yuan, the 3 koi's bloodline isn't simple. The bloodlines of these 3 koi fish are the same, and they influence and attract each other. When they are together, the 3 bloodlines faintly fuse into one, as if there is only one bloodline that is 3 times larger. When these 3 koi fish evolve to a certain extent, it's very likely that one of them will be the main one and the other 2 will be the support, forming a special mutation and evolution." He did not know what the special mutation evolution the mother of Bloodbath was talking about. However, Lin Yuan secretly remembered it in his heart. These 3 Mountain River Eternal Life carps had slowly evolved from myriad form, and every evolution had been through Lin Yuan's hands. Therefore, if a special mutation really occurred in the future, he would be well aware of it and would not panic at that time. In less than half an hour, Hu Quan threw the newly made mask with cloud patterns to the mother of Bloodbath. After Lin Yuan and the mother of Bloodbath went out, he booked a flying fei and headed toward the Leaning Moon Mountain's Radiant Moon Palace. At the entrance of the Radiant Moon Palace, the mother of Bloodbath turned into a fist-sized red spider. It landed on the branch of the silver stamen gold luster cassia that had yet to evolve to the suzerain grade in front of the Radiant Moon Palace. Once feis reached the suzerain grade, they would have strong territorial awareness. Therefore, unless the 2 feis were familiar with each other, rashly landing on someone else's body was equivalent to a great provocation and offense. After he entered the Radiant Moon Palace, he went straight to the inner palace. Before reaching the entrance of the inner palace, Lin Yuan smelled waves of lotus fragrance. At that moment, Lin Yuan could not help but think of what his master, the Moon Empress, had said before. She wanted to make lotus root powder with the roots of those suzerain lotus fays. Lin Yuan swallowed his saliva and felt a little sorry for those lotus fays that he could see every time he came to the inner palace. The Moon Empress wouldn't really make a move on those lotus fays that had just become suzerain, right? As soon as he entered the inner palace, Lin Yuan saw his master combing the seven-tailed sun-swallowing fox's fur. Mystic Moon was directing Kai Cha and Yin Cha to cut the lotus roots in the lotus pond. This pool of newly promoted suzerain lotus fays all looked weak, helpless, and pitiful. Even the colorful lotuses that were blooming were drooping, appearing very dispirited. He felt that if these lotus fays could make expressions, they would have an expression that said, "Don't come over." Lin Yuan is. Even the flowers are slacking off. Looks like there are too many lotus seeds. It just so happens that His Highness is here. If we add lotus seeds to the lotus root starch, the taste will definitely be improved to another level. Many to the lotus that he said. To say, he, suzerain, Kai suzerain to say. The moon Lin was, king, god demon, I demon moon, the lotus even. Said, the moon. Try the camellia frost jade cake made from the camellia flowers we planted in the garden outside the palace and see if it suits your taste. Try the flower powder jade cake made from the camellia flowers we grew in the garden outside the palace. See if it suits your taste. Lin Yuan took a bite of the pollen frost jade paste and felt a fragrance in his mouth. There was also the taste of chestnut in the middle, which was very soft and sweet. When the Moon Empress saw Lin Yuan eat the pollen frost jade paste, she was afraid that he would choke, so she poured him a cup of spirit tea. Since you're here today, I'll let Kai Cha and Yin Cha grind a bowl of assorted lotus root powder for you in a while. Since you're here today, I'll let Kai Cha and Yin Cha grind a bowl of assorted lotus root powder for you. These dozens of kinds of suzerain lotus root powder, together with the nectar of the suzerain silver stamen gold luster cassia, should be able to wash away the impurities in your body again and truly let your body reach a dirt-free state. Lin Yuan reached out and scratched the hair on the back of his head, thinking that every time he came to the Radiant Moon Palace, his master, the Moon Empress, would always make delicious food for him. Usually, she would also let Mystic Moon send all kinds of things to the mansion. There was food, spiritual ingredients, spirit chi clothing, and even strategic class treasures and spatial source-type items with spatial teleportation ability. Cold Moon had not returned to the Radiant Moon Palace for a long time. During this time, Lin Yuan had called Chu Ci and found out that she had taken her to the most remote of the 32 major cities, Osmantha City, to train. It had greatly improved Chu Ci's horizons and strength during this time. Lin Yuan usually wanted to send something to the Radiant Moon Palace, but the Moon Empress had never accepted it. She would only say, "Master doesn't lack anything. Don't worry about yourself. If you lack anything, just tell Master." In Lin Yuan's opinion, this kind of relationship that only cared for her and did not ask for anything in return was actually kinship. Lin Yuan waved his hand and took out the 3 stomach stones that contained extremely strong energy waves that the ethereal jellyfish had spat out and said, "Master, these 3 cyan crystals are what the ethereal jellyfish's stomach spat out when I contracted it." Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress took the 3 cyan stomach stones from Lin Yuan's hand and said, "Master, these 3 cyan crystals are what the ethereal jellyfish spat out when I contracted it." Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress took the 3 green stomach stones from Lin Yuan's hand and checked them. The energy contained in these 3 stomach stones is almost all condensed from the energy in that bottle of green spirit liquid. They can be considered spiritual ingredients with rich spatial energy. Keep them well. They might be useful in the future. Lin Yuan put away the stomach stones formed by the 3 stomach stones spat out by the ethereal jellyfish. Then he told the Moon Empress about the ethereal jellyfish's exclusive skill, Space Tunnel. Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress was obviously interested. She said, "Why don't you build a space tunnel between the Radiant Moon Palace and your mansion? It will be much more convenient in the future." Lin Yuan also had this purpose. Lin Yuan summoned the ethereal jellyfish and took out the tentacles that he had cut off to set up a spatial node. Then he ordered the ethereal jellyfish to connect the spatial node he had set up in the mansion with the one he had just set up in the Radiant Moon Palace. After receiving Lin Yuan's order, layers of spatial energy appeared on the ethereal jellyfish's pale red body. These layers of spatial energy collided with each other at the node, faintly opening up a tunnel. He knew he should throw in the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles to help the tunnel expand. Before Lin Yuan could throw in a large number of tentacles that he had cut off earlier, a large number of tentacles appeared. The ethereal jellyfish took the initiative to cut off one of its 3 spiral tentacles. It allowed the broken spiral tentacle to melt into the newly formed tunnel. Make up for yesterday's second day, end of chapter. Chapter 393. However, although this tunnel gradually took shape, the energy was still somewhat insufficient. At that moment, Lin Yuan recalled that under True Data, the exclusive skill, Space Tunnel, said that the formation of the space tunnel was after using the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles. It could also be supplemented with spatial spiritual materials. Lin Yuan simply took out the green crystal formed by the ethereal jellyfish's stomach and threw it into this tunnel that was about to form. Immediately after, this tunnel extracted a large amount of energy from the green crystal, and Lin Yuan found that he did not need to throw in the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles anymore. This 2-meter-tall tunnel was completely built. Lin Yuan looked at this tunnel formed by spatial energy and stepped into it. Lin Yuan did not feel anything special when he stepped into the space tunnel. He only felt that he had walked through a door, but when he stepped out of this door, the scene changed. Lin Yuan was very familiar with the changed scene, as he was standing in his room in the mansion. Immediately after, Lin Yuan passed through this tunnel and collapsed in the opposite direction. After stepping out of the tunnel, Lin Yuan returned to the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace. The green crystal formed by the ethereal jellyfish's stomach had been reduced by 1/3. The remaining 2/3 of the green crystal fell to the ground. After Lin Yuan picked up this green crystal, he fell into deep thought. When Lin Yuan had just let the ethereal jellyfish use its exclusive skill, Space Tunnel, 2 unexpected things had happened. One was that the ethereal jellyfish's spiral tentacles, which were more than twice as long as ordinary tentacles, could actually detach from the ethereal jellyfish's body. After detaching, it would not cause harm to the ethereal jellyfish's body. The other point was that after the ethereal jellyfish used the spiral tentacles in the center of its body, it could completely rely on extracting a large amount of spatial energy to extend this space tunnel's distance. Lin Yuan could feel that as long as he marked 2 spatial nodes, no matter how far apart they were, as long as he had enough spatial energy to support the opening of this tunnel, he could open a complete space tunnel of infinite length. The Moon Empress immediately saw the crux of this space tunnel's formation. She asked, "Can the ethereal jellyfish's space tunnel rely on spatial energy to increase its distance?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded. The Moon Empress pondered for a few seconds before asking, "What are the conditions for setting up the space tunnel?" Lin Yuan thought for a moment and said, "That's right. We need to use the tentacles of this ethereal jellyfish to set up a space node and then connect the 2 space nodes to form a space corridor." After saying that, Lin Yuan took out one of the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles and handed it to the Moon Empress. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly understood something based on the spatial tunnel he had set up previously. Even if True Data could display the phase abilities and exclusive skills in detail, it would still be useless. The actual effects and strength of skills and exclusive skills could only be determined after real tests. Otherwise, it would just be an armchair strategist. At that moment, the Moon Empress' words caused Lin Yuan to raise his head in shock. "Do you have any plans to go to the continent outside the Radiance Federation to develop?" Upon hearing the Moon Empress' words, Lin Yuan immediately understood what she meant. Master, could this spatial tunnel be built from the royal capital to the other continents' federations outside the Radiance Federation? The Moon Empress flipped her hand and took out a gemstone that flickered with intense silver luster. With the spatial shellfish crystals shed from the spatial mother shellfish, it is possible to set up a spatial tunnel from the royal capital to the nearest federation outside the Radiance Federation. Upon hearing the words, spatial mother shellfish, Lin Yuan immediately thought of ostrich logistics spatial crystal shellfish. The Moon Empress looked at Lin Yuan's probing eyes and explained. You should be thinking about the relationship between the hollow crystal shellfish and the hollow crystal mother shellfish, right? The hollow crystal shellfish and the hollow crystal mother shellfish are really inextricably linked. Upon hearing the Moon Empress say that the spatial shellfish and the spatial mother shellfish were inextricably linked, Lin Yuan guessed it. Is it a hollow crystal shellfish born from the hollow crystal mother shellfish? Lin Yuan thought about the rumors about ostrich logistics. The hollow crystal shellfish was said to be a mutated fae from ostrich logistics research. The empty crystal shellfish had always been in the hands of ostrich logistics. Could it be related to the mother shellfish? Lin Yuan guessed that the hollow crystal shellfish and the spatial mother shellfish were in a subordinate relationship. This was because Lin Yuan could feel that the spatial energy contained in the crystal dropped by the mother shellfish was thousands of times stronger than the green spirit liquid concocted from the hollow crystal shellfish's shell powder. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's guess, the Moon Empress revealed a gentle smile. You guessed it right, but it's not accurate. Ostrich Logistics Hollow Crystal Shellfish is just one of the hollow crystal mother shellfish's abilities. This spatial mother shellfish is not a fae or source-type life form, but a sacred source life form. Lin Yuan listened to the Moon Empress' words, which he had never heard of before. This hollow crystal mother shellfish should be Ostrich Logistics' secret all along. But what was a sacred source life form? Before Lin Yuan could ask, the Moon Empress explained to him like she had during the previous question and answer session. In Class 1 to Class 4 dimensional rifts, the things produced at the spatial hub are called source-type life forms. As the grade of the dimensional rift increases, the number of source-type life forms produced will also increase. When a dimensional rift reaches Class 5, it will no longer produce source-type life forms. When a Class 5 dimensional rift is destroyed, it will produce one and only one sacred source life form. At Class 5, the interior of a dimensional rift is like a complete small world. The sacred source life form contains the laws of a Class 5 dimensional rift's small world. Of course, the sacred source life form has to be compatible with a person's soul. According to the strength of a person's soul, a person can only contract one sacred source life form in their lifetime. However, there are some life forms with powerful souls that can contract two sacred source life forms. After listening to the Moon Empress' explanation, Lin Yuan immediately understood how rare and powerful sacred source life forms were. There were only a few Class 5 dimensional rifts in this world, and the highest combat power in Class 5 dimensional rifts was already equivalent to human Emperor class experts. They might even be slightly stronger than human Emperor class experts. Sacred source life forms contained the laws of heaven and earth, which was equivalent to a law rune. In other words, sacred source life forms were above the laws and could command heaven and earth. Although Lin Yuan was curious, he did not ask the Moon Empress for more information about sacred source life forms. In Lin Yuan's opinion, sacred source life forms were too far away from him. As for whether contracting sacred source life forms was related to the strength of one's soul, Lin Yuan had no idea. Soul power and spiritual energy were different. The soul had always been the most mysterious and untouchable existence. However, Lin Yuan suddenly thought that as a transmigrator, he had lived an extra life. Would his soul be stronger than an ordinary person's? The Moon Empress extended her hand and lovingly stroked Lin Yuan's hair. Sacred source life forms are sealed by the power of laws. No one can find out what's inside and what use they have. However, one thing is certain. There are no weak sacred source life forms. Alright, disciple, let's not talk about sacred source life forms for now. Have you ever thought of building a spatial tunnel from your manor to the Radiance Federations outside? Then, you can go there to absorb the resources you need, develop your faction, and train? When the Moon Empress suddenly mentioned sacred source lifeforms, Mystic Moon had been thinking about it for a while. The Moon Empress had previously said that she would give His Young Highness a sacred source life form on his 20th birthday. Why did she mention it now? His Young Highness had just reached 19 years old. If he were to contract a sacred source life form and his soul was damaged, it would affect his entire life. However, when the Moon Empress changed the topic, Mystic Moon's heart was finally at ease. Yesterday's third chapter, Asking for Tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 394. Lin Yuan felt the Moon Empress' hand rubbing on his head. Her warm and slender fingers were helping him tidy up the hair on his forehead that had been messed up by the wind before entering the inner palace. Lin Yuan could not help but think of when he was young, his mother always helped him tidy up the hair on his forehead like this. In this life, Lin Yuan did not know why his hair was extremely soft. When a slightly stronger wind blew, the hair on his forehead would become messy. Even if the hair on Lin Yuan's forehead was messed up by the wind, it would not look sloppy. Instead, it had a hint of unruly handsomeness. However, his messy hair made him look a few years younger than he was now. As a transmigrator, Lin Yuan was already an adult soul from birth in this life. He had over 20 years of memories from his previous life. Bits and pieces of his childhood were the most precious memories sealed in Lin Yuan's heart. Since his mother had passed away, Lin Yuan had shouldered all the burdens alone. His messy hair, which no one had helped him tidy up, was once again moved by someone. Lin Yuan felt that his eyes were a little hot. As for what his master, the Moon Empress, had said, did he want to go outside the Radiance Federation to absorb the resources he needed? At the same time, he wanted to develop his own forces and train himself. Of course, Lin Yuan wanted to. However, Lin Yuan had never set foot in the world outside the Radiance Federation, although he was not completely clueless about the world outside the Radiance Federation. Although he was not completely ignorant of the world outside the Radiance Federation, what he knew about the world outside the Radiance Federation was only those common-sense questions that the Moon Empress had mentioned during the Q&A. Lin Yuan believed that he now had the Mother of Bloodbath, a Suzerain/Myth 2 expert, and Endless Summer, a Suzerain/Myth 3 expert. He already had the capital to set foot in the world outside the Radiance Federation in terms of martial strength. The Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer were existences that could rival Emperor-class experts in terms of strength. In terms of resources, Lin Yuan controlled the high-quality bronze phase. As long as there were spirit chi professionals, high-quality bronze phase were the most scarce existences. Lin Yuan's faction had just started. If he could step out of the Radiance Federation to develop, then Lin Yuan would be able to eat a huge cake with two sides. The world outside the Radiance Federation gave Lin Yuan a platform to do as he pleased and grow without any scruples. This would only be beneficial to the development of his faction, Sky City. Lin Yuan had always believed in one thing. Stand straight where you can see, because you stand steady where you can't see. If Sky City wanted to be stable, it needed more resources and military support. Since it was the place he yearned for, he naturally had to travel through the trials and tribulations. Thus, Lin Yuan spoke seriously and firmly. Teacher, I want to open a space tunnel to explore the world outside the Radiance. When the Moon Empress heard that, the smile on her face widened. You've made the right decision. Go to the outside world of the Radiance Federation and explore. Only then will you know how to develop a real faction. A faction's prestige can only be built by fighting. If a faction's growth isn't done through bloodshed, then it will only be an empty shell in the end. Although the Moon Empress had a smile on her face, her words were extremely serious. Lin Yuan could feel the Moon Empress's pointers and teachings for him from her words. The Moon Empress did not wait for Lin Yuan to speak and continued. The Radiance Federation is full of beautiful mountains and rivers, quiet and peaceful. On one hand, it's because the Radiance Federation dominates a continent and is one of the three major federations. On the other hand, it's because the Radiance Federation has always discouraged life and death struggles among spirit chi professionals. However, the outside world is completely different. People in the outside world would fight to the death for a little bit of resources. It's common for people to fight until their heads bleed. Lin Yuan naturally understood what the Moon Empress meant. He had always known that this world was a world where strength was respected. Only strength was fundamental. Without sufficient strength, one could not keep the corresponding resources at all. Lin Yuan had been accumulating resources with the sole purpose of using these resources to increase his strength. Lin Yuan's faction's development would certainly not stop at the current stability. Lin Yuan had already begun to forge the sword in his hand with a plan and then sharpen it step by step. However, the white-clothed follower plan had just begun, and the materials for forging the sword in Lin Yuan's hand were not ready yet. Since Lin Yuan had already planned to connect the spatial tunnel from his royal capital to the world outside the Radiance Federation, he had to know very clearly where the other side of the spatial tunnel was connected. Teacher, you said that the energy contained in the hollow crystal mother shellfish can support the opening of the spatial tunnel to the Federation closest to the Radiance Federation. What about the Federation closest to the Radiance Federation? Since Lin Yuan wanted to develop his faction and train himself in the world outside the Radiance Federation, he definitely could not open the other side of the spatial tunnel in a desolate place. Since Lin Yuan wanted to develop his faction and train himself in the world outside the Radiance Federation, he definitely could not open the other side of the spatial tunnel in a desolate place. Rather than that, Lin Yuan might as well go straight into the Radiance Federation's deep mountains and forests. Therefore, Lin Yuan was destined to open the other side of the spatial tunnel to the Federation closest to the Radiance Federation. However, he did not know whether he should develop it secretly in a remote place or openly in the city. Lin Yuan needed to understand the situation before he could make a decision. As Lin Yuan's teacher, the Moon Empress liked to see Lin Yuan's thirst for knowledge the most. Every time she saw Lin Yuan like this, she always wanted to tell him everything she knew in detail. The Federation closest to the Radiance Federation is separated from the Radiance Federation by a vast sea. It's called the Divine Wood Federation on another continent. However, the Divine Wood Federation does not occupy a continent by itself like the Radiance Federation. The Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation share the continent's resources together. The spatial shellfish crystal that fell from the hollow crystal mother shellfish is a little small. Otherwise, you can choose between the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation. When the Moon Empress spoke, she was obviously thinking about something. Mystic Moon broke out in a cold sweat. If the Moon Empress went to Ostrich Logistics Elder Space to pick up the mother shellfish's shell, would Elder Space's depression, which had not been cured, flare up again and become autistic? It was Lin Yuan's first time hearing about the Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation. However, as a healing-type spirit chi professional, Lin Yuan preferred to output. It could be seen that he had the blood of a boar in his bones. At that moment, Lin Yuan's blood was already boiling. Sob sob sob, please come to QQ to support the original version. Make up a full subscription, save the child. There will be 6 updates today. This is the first update, only the 5th watch was left. Ask for a ticket, end of chapter. Chapter 395. Seeing that the Moon Empress was acting strangely, Mystic Moon hurriedly said. Moon Empress, I heard that Spacetime Elder has been depressed recently and doesn't speak for a few days. He was seriously ill some time ago and has yet to recover. What do you think? When the Moon Empress heard Xian Yu's words, she couldn't help but look a little embarrassed. Elder Spacetime didn't act rashly just because his granddaughter insisted on being a courier. Half a year ago, someone complained and asked for a replacement. What does that old thing's illness have to do with me? However, after Mystic Moon's reminder, the Moon Empress recalled the Spacetime Elder's gloomy expression. The Moon Empress gave up on the idea of going to the Spacetime Elder's place to prick a larger hollow crystal mother shellfish. Thus, the Moon Empress continued to explain the situation of the Divine Wood Federation to him. The Divine Wood Federation's climate is warm and humid all year round, and it is especially suitable for plant phase and spiritual ingredients to grow. The entire Divine Wood Federation can be considered a treasure land with abundant plant phase resources. The Divine Wood Federation's various plant phase produce a lot of spirit fruits, so almost every household in the Divine Wood Federation uses spirit fruits to make wine. Also, I don't know if the people in the Divine Wood Federation are influenced by the environment, but they all love poetry, singing, and even some literary works. After listening to the Moon Empress' introduction of the Divine Wood Federation, Lin Yuan began to think about how he should develop in it. At this moment, the Moon Empress spoke again. Although the Divine Wood Federation is a treasure land rich in plant phase and has precious and powerful plant phase, the Divine Wood Federation doesn't have many plants. However, the Divine Wood Federation's creation masters are extremely scarce. There isn't a single Class 5 creation master in the entire Divine Wood Federation, and the highest-ranked creation masters are only 2 pinnacle Class 4 creation masters. At this point, the Moon Empress paused slightly and suddenly changed the topic. If you go to the Divine Wood Federation, don't drink too much of the fruit wine there. Their wine is different from ours. Many of the fruit wines brewed by the Divine Wood Federation have added protein-rich insect species phase organs. It is said to enhance the flavor of the fruit wine. When Lin Yuan heard the Moon Empress words, he had a complicated expression. Could an insect species phase internal organs really enhance the flavor of the fruit wine? The bitter and smelly insect species phase organs were added to the intoxicating sweet fruit wine. What kind of immortal taste was that? Even if he was a curious baby, he did not have the interest to try at all. Lin Yuan suddenly thought that the people of the Divine Wood Federation were quite creative. Was this considered simplifying the cultural style of, there must be meat when drinking wine? The Moon Empress spoke again. Because the Divine Wood Federation lacks creation master resources, the status of creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation is unimaginably high. The Divine Wood Federation has an aristocratic system. Even a Class 1 creation master is considered an aristocrat in the Divine Wood Federation. If this Class 1 creation master is walking on the streets and feels that he has been offended by the poor, then this Class 1 creation master has the authority to execute the poor on the streets. Upon hearing the Moon Empress' introduction of the Divine Wood Federation, Lin Yuan immediately felt the bloody darkness under the Divine Wood Federation's singing and dancing. Even a creation master could casually execute a poor person on the street if he didn't like them. Lin Yuan could completely imagine how unscrupulous high-class creation masters would be in the Divine Wood Federation. However, this situation where creation masters had an extremely high status in the Divine Wood Federation made Lin Yuan's eyes light up. His faction was still in its infancy and needed a lot of spiritual materials and resources. There were a lot of plant phase in the Divine Wood Federation, so it was a good place for him to collect spiritual materials and resources. Lin Yuan then remembered that the Moon Empress had mentioned the other 2 federations on the same continent as the Divine Wood Federation, so he asked her. Teacher, how is the relationship between the Iron Hammer Federation and the Deep Lush Federation with the Divine Wood Federation? Upon hearing that, the Moon Empress suddenly looked at her palm and replied, a world where strength is respected is full of danger. Although the 3 federations appear harmonious on the surface to outsiders, the open and covert struggles are no less than the collision between waves and reefs at sea. The Divine Wood Federation has a warm and humid climate, so it naturally has a lot of food resources. The Iron Hammer Federation is the opposite. The Iron Hammer Federation's climate is dry, and almost the entire continent is dominated by wastelands. On the other hand, the Iron Hammer Federation is the opposite. The Iron Hammer Federation's climate is dry, and almost the entire continent is dominated by wastelands. Even excellent plants like the needled iron bark tree, which can survive 1 rain a year, have records of death in the Iron Hammer Federation. But on the other hand, the Iron Hammer Federation is very rich in ore resources, so it has a lot of metal resources that can be used to exchange for other supplies. Lin Yuan was a little confused when he heard the Moon Empress words. According to what you said, the Iron Hammer Federation and the Divine Wood Federation form a perfect complement, so there is bound to be a lot of material exchanges between the 2 federations. In my opinion, these two federations should have a very close relationship. Why is their relationship so tense? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the Moon Empress smiled slightly and did not answer his question directly. Instead, she asked, "You're right, but people are always ambitious." You're right, but people are always ambitious. The Iron Hammer Federation is stronger than the Divine Wood Federation in terms of force. If you were a member of the Iron Hammer Federation now, what choice would you make when faced with a land with abundant resources? Lin Yuan said without thinking, "Plunder." The Moon Empress looked at Lin Yuan with appreciation and said, "That's right. The people of the Iron Hammer Federation are very tough. They have tried to seize the land of the Divine Wood Federation many times, but the Divine Wood Federation has resisted tenaciously. However, the Divine Wood Federation also paid a huge price for this. Therefore, the Divine Wood Federation hates the Iron Hammer Federation very much. Therefore, the Divine Wood Federation won't let the plant phase produced by the Divine Wood Federation flow into the Iron Hammer Federation to help improve the Iron Hammer Federation's environment. At the same time, the Divine Wood Federation has been eyeing the mineral resources of the Iron Hammer Federation covetously and has secretly attacked the mineral bases of the Iron Hammer Federation countless times." Upon hearing the Moon Empress' words, Lin Yuan immediately understood that this was a game between the two major federations. At that moment, the Moon Empress said again, "You should be thinking right now that these two federations have already reached the point where one side will not rest until the other is dead, but why are they still maintaining a calm surface?" Lin Yuan nodded. Lin Yuan did not understand this. "Then we'll have to talk about the third federation on that continent, the Deep Venom Federation. Looking for tickets. There are still 4 more code word, end of chapter." Chapter 396. The Moon Empress smiled and explained, "The Deep Brahman Federation is quite interesting." The Deep Brahman Federation is quite interesting. The Deep Brahman Federation is a federation where all of its citizens are scholars and businessmen. Most of the chambers of commerce on that continent are secretly controlled and operated by people from the Deep Brahman Federation. It's also because of these chambers of commerce that the Deep Brahman Federation forms a material chain. This allows a small amount of the materials that the Iron Hammer Federation and the Divine Wood Federation refuse to sell to each other. However, the Deep Brahman Federation is also the most ambitious. At one time, it wanted to use huge resources to control the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation, but it was secretly attacked by the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation at the same time. Since the Deep Brahman Federation only has an advantage in materials, it is the weakest in terms of top experts. Therefore, the Deep Brahman Federation's chambers of commerce are disguised by the Divine Wood Federation and the Iron Hammer Federation every year to plunder the supplies controlled by the Deep Brahman Federation's chamber of commerce. Lin Yuan listened to the Moon Empress talk about the relationship between the 3 federations on another continent. He could not help but rub his forehead. The Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Brahman Federation were 3 old foxes who schemed against each other. Each wanted to swallow the other 2, but their relationship formed a triangle that constantly pulled at each other. Although they bit each other, they eventually formed a delicate balance. In the end, a delicate balance was formed. Although it was a pool of clean water on the surface, there was a turbulent undercurrent in the dark. However, this made Lin Yuan even more interested, as he could only catch fish in troubled waters. The more chaotic it was, the more interesting it would be to stir up a storm. The Moon Empress noticed Lin Yuan's interested expression and was a little stunned. She did not expect her disciple to be a little boorish fellow. The Moon Empress suddenly felt that if she sent her disciple to the Iron Hammer Federation, would her disciple use the Iron Hammer Federation's best hammer diplomacy to smash the Iron Hammer Federation's head when facing those boorish fellows who only had muscles in their brains? The Moon Empress was really afraid that after Lin Yuan teleported through the spatial tunnel, he would directly clash with the factions on another continent. The Moon Empress was not afraid that Lin Yuan would cause trouble, but she was afraid that this would make Lin Yuan lose the purpose of developing on another continent. However, Lin Yuan's question immediately dispelled the Moon Empress' worries. The Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan say, Teacher, I've decided. Teacher, I've decided. I'm going to build a small stronghold near the city of the Divine Wood Federation. Then, I'll slowly make contact with the forces of the Divine Wood Federation. When the Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan's words, she was very impressed. Wouldn't it be better to just go to the Divine Wood Federation's big city and reveal my identity as a creation master? Lin Yuan didn't even think about it before speaking. Creation masters have such a high status in the Divine Wood Federation. Even a Class 1 creation master will enjoy the power of life and death. In such an environment, effort and enjoyment are often equal. I believe it isn't easy for creation masters to survive in the Divine Wood Federation. The Divine Wood Federation, the Iron Hammer Federation, and the Deep Lush Federation were connected to each other on the same continent. A creation master would be in high demand wherever they went and would be able to develop well no matter where they went. The Divine Wood Federation was already lacking in creation master resources, so it gave creation masters preferential treatment. The creation masters would also have firm control over the creation masters and prevent them from leaking out. Therefore, the Divine Wood Federation's creation masters were destined to give up their relative freedom. Moreover, if the Divine Wood Federation's creation masters wanted to compete, they would not only have to give up this relative freedom, but their lives might also be in danger. The Divine Wood Federation had rich Fey resources. As long as there were more high-class creation masters, the Divine Wood Federation's strength could develop rapidly. However, even though the Divine Wood Federation had treated creation masters so well for so many years, the number of creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation had not increased. Therefore, it was obvious that the Iron Hammer Federation and the Deep Lush Federation must have made a move on the Divine Wood Federation's creation masters in the dark. Many of the creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation were probably on the path of growth and had unknowingly reincarnated. Lin Yuan had already seen the chaos of people's hearts in the valley of the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift. The creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation would only have such a high status in the Divine Wood Federation when creation master resources were scarce. Therefore, Lin Yuan could not help but guess how the number of creation masters in the Federation had not increased. How was it related to the other creation masters in the Divine Wood Federation? However, the more it was like this, the more Lin Yuan wanted to go to the Divine Wood Federation to train. No one was born a genius without studying, and it was the same for Lin Yuan. Even if Lin Yuan had lived an extra life, he still had a lot to grow in. Therefore, the more chaotic the place was, the faster Lin Yuan's growth could be accelerated. When the Moon Empress saw that Lin Yuan could see clearly, she didn't remind him anymore and told him not to be rash when encountering trouble. The Moon Empress tapped her finger on the table and asked seriously, "Do you know what a carcinoma Fey is?" When Lin Yuan saw how serious the Moon Empress was, he sat up straight and became exceptionally serious. Lin Yuan didn't know what a carcinoma Fey was, so he shook his head. However, since the Moon Empress was so serious, it was obvious that she was talking about something that he needed to pay attention to. Those lifeforms that aren't powerful but are able to destroy low-grade lifeforms are called carcinoma Fays. For example, the sawtooth devour ants and poison dust locusts that appeared in Golden Edge City 3 years ago. Cancer organisms are rare mutated individuals that appear in the natural world for unknown reasons. Such carcinoma Fays do occasionally appear in the Radiance Federation, but most of the time, before the spirit guards can cause any substantial harm, they will be taken in by the spirit guards. But the Divine Wood Federation doesn't have such an organization like the spirit guards. Plenty of carcinoma Fays are collected by people with intentions and are used as weapons. After hearing the Moon Empress words, Lin Yuan felt his blood run cold. Back when the sawtooth devour ants and poison dust locusts appeared in Golden Edge City, it had caused Golden Edge City's overall strength to fall from the 7th position among the 32 major cities to the last position. It was a complete disaster, but Lin Yuan didn't expect that the culprits of this disaster were the sawtooth devour ants and poison dust locusts. At the start of this disaster, the adventurers outside of Golden Edge City suddenly discovered that ants that were usually invisible had suddenly increased. When these ants appeared individually, they were very afraid of humans. Even if they appeared in groups, they wouldn't run far away when they saw humans, but they would try to take a detour. Therefore, most of the adventurers didn't pay attention to them. Even the spirit guards didn't pay much attention to these ants that weren't even the size of a mung bean. However, just after 3 days, when the people of Golden Edge City woke up in the morning, the people of Golden Edge City were shocked to discover that the outside of the city was filled with black ant colonies that stretched as far as the eye could see. Asking for tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 397. By the time the spirit guards reacted, it was already too late. These sawtooth devour ants, which were no bigger than mung beans, couldn't find food outside the city. Driven by hunger, they started to invade Golden Edge City. As long as these sawtooth devour ants saw something, they would use their sawtooth-like mouths to start gnawing and devouring the debris. This caused a large number of Golden Edge City's buildings to collapse. Of course, the sawtooth devour ants didn't just devour the buildings. At the same time, there were ordinary people and low-rank spirit chi professionals who couldn't escape in time. This disaster came with great momentum and didn't give the spirit guards any time to prepare. However, the spirit guards immediately reacted to the situation and began to provide assistance. Logically speaking, the ants in the natural world were produced by the queen ant, and all kinds of ants would work together to maintain the survival of the ant colony. However, when the spirit guards realized that they couldn't find the queen ant based on the ant colony's movements, they looked for a high-ranking scholar. Through research and experiments, they found that when each mung bean-sized sawtooth devour ant ate enough food, it would activate the ant queen gene in its body and produce 100 ant eggs in its abdomen. It would then use its body as nutrients to nurture the 100 ant eggs in its abdomen. This process didn't depend on time, but on how much food the sawtooth devour ants ate. After eating enough food, the sawtooth devour ants could complete the ant queen gene's awakening within 3 hours and use its own death as the price to incubate 100 ant eggs. After eating enough food, the sawtooth devourer ant could complete the awakening of the ant queen gene within 3 hours. Then, at the cost of its own death, it would hatch hundreds of its own kind. This discovery made the spirit guards despair. These sawtooth devour ants were different from the alien insects that appeared in the alien insect dimensional rift. There might be a lot of alien insects, but the smallest of them was the size of a house cat and could be effectively attacked. Moreover, as long as an expert entered the alien insect dimensional rift's entrance and retrieved the source type item, the alien insect dimensional rift would dissipate. There might be a lot of alien insects, but the smallest of them was the size of a house cat and could be effectively attacked. The strength of these sawtooth devour ants might not be comparable to a normal fae even if there were 100 of them. A child would be able to stomp a few sawtooth devour ants to death. However, there were simply too many sawtooth devour ants, which weren't even the size of a mung bean. The ant colony would be able to flatten everything by eating. Based on the sawtooth devour ant's reproduction method, even if there was only one sawtooth devour ant left, the disaster wouldn't be considered over. How could he kill all of these little things? If he found the Radiance Federation's super experts and used a carpet attack within the sawtooth devour ant's range of activity, it might be effective. But if he really did that, Golden Edge City would really turn into dust, and all the wealth would be destroyed. However, Golden Edge City was plagued by misfortune. Another carcinoma fae, the poison dust locusts, had appeared. However, this new carcinoma fae, the poison dust locusts, had saved the precarious Golden Edge City. When the carcinoma fae, the poison dust locusts, appeared, they immediately treated the sawtooth devour ants as food. The two types of carcinoma faes, the sawtooth devour ant and the poison dust locusts, were ultimately victorious. Under the counterattack of the sawtooth devourer ants, only a few poison dust locusts remained. At that moment, the spirit guards took action and captured the remaining sawtooth devourer ants and poison dust locusts in one fell swoop. When High Star scholars and fae observers were researching, it was equivalent to saving Golden Edge City's poison dust locusts. They discovered that the cancerous poison dust locusts could release poison dust while flying. But after some research, the high star scholars and Fae observers were drenched in cold sweat. The poison dust released by the poison dust locusts was actually a kind of emotional toxin that could turn love into hatred. The deeper the love, the purer the hatred, the purer it would be. If Golden Edge City's ordinary people and spirit chi professionals were infected on a large scale, then Golden Edge City would become the world's most terrifying hatred purgatory. At that time, a Class 5 scholar had even published an article saying that it was fortunate that the sawtooth devour ants and poison dust locusts had appeared together. Otherwise, it would have been a city-destroying disaster. His master, the Moon Empress, had mentioned that some people in the Divine Wood Federation were collecting these carcinoma fays and using them as weapons. This allowed Lin Yuan to understand the craziness of the spirit chi professionals on the other continent. Just as he was thinking about this, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that his thoughts were a little rigid. Perhaps the other continent was the true appearance of the spirit chi professional world without the protection of a powerful federation. Lin Yuan looked at the Moon Empress' serious and concerned expression and knew that his master had said so much to explain the Divine Wood Federation situation to him. At the same time, she was reminding him to pay attention to his safety. Lin Yuan let out a bright smile and revealed his white teeth. "Don't worry, master. I will pay attention to my safety." Lin Yuan, who had lived 2 lifetimes, knew the preciousness of life better than ordinary people. Only when one was alive would one be able to shoulder kinship, friendship, and responsibility. Therefore, Lin Yuan was very prudent when doing things and wouldn't easily risk his safety. When the Moon Empress heard Lin Yuan's reply, she knew that Lin Yuan understood her other meaning. Just as the Moon Empress was about to give Lin Yuan another piece of pollen frost jade cake, Kai Cha happened to walk over with the ground assorted lotus root starch. Kai Cha placed the assorted lotus root starch in front of Lin Yuan and said, "Young lord, the Moon Empress asked me to prepare the lotus root starch is ready." The lotus root starch that the Moon Empress asked me to prepare is ready and served. Lin Yuan saw that the lotus root starch that Kai Cha brought over was pink in color. It was also faintly emitting a kind of gold and silver luster. It was obvious that the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar was added. A fresh and sweet fragrance flowed into Lin Yuan's nose from the assorted lotus root starch, making Lin Yuan feel as though thousands of lotus flowers were blooming in his mind. Just the fragrance from the lotus root starch made Lin Yuan feel as though the depths of his mind had been cleaned by someone. An extremely relaxed feeling made Lin Yuan feel as though he was lying on a cloud. That was probably the case of the saying, "Only by looking at the lotus flower's cleanliness will one know that one's heart isn't tainted." Lin Yuan looked at the lotus root starch that Kai Cha had brought over and then at the suzerain lotus phase in the pond. He felt immense pressure. If he were to drink this bowl of lotus root starch in front of these suzerain lotus phase, what would these lotus phase think? Would they feel excited? This was no different from chopping off a blackback mountain boar's leg and barbecuing it in front of the boar. After barbecuing it, what was the difference between asking the blackback mountain boar if it wanted to eat it? This was completely drawing aggro. When the Moon Empress saw Lin Yuan sneaking glances at the lotus phase in the pond, she couldn't help but smile and say, "In a while, go to your pavilion and drink this lotus root starch again. In a while, go to your pavilion and drink this lotus root starch again. By then, you will be cleansing the impurities in your body again. Previously, you cleansed the impurities on your body. This time, you will be cleansing the impurities from your soul." The silver stamen gold luster cassia cleanses the body in the mortal world and the soul in the heavenly world. However, cleansing the impurities on the soul is not as easy as cleansing the impurities on the body. Recently, due to the change of environment, coupled with the fact that something had happened at home, the updates were not timely and had to be constantly updated. Let's talk about the daily updates. It was still 3 chapters a day. After releasing this chapter, Button still owed 2 chapters. In addition to today's 3 chapters, it meant that he would have to release 5 chapters. Today, he would try his best to release all of them without owing. Then, "I still owe your little fairy" is my 5 chapters reward. I will try my best to add more chapters in the next few days. There are also book friends who are asking about the love line of this book. Is it a single female lead or no female lead? Asking for votes, support, recommendation votes, monthly votes la la la, end of this chapter. Chapter 398. He recalled the time when he had consumed the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. He didn't even have the time to carefully feel the sweet and fragrant osmanthus fragrance in the silver stamen gold luster nectar. He felt as if a bolt of lightning had exploded in his abdomen. An intense pain spread from his abdomen to his internal organs. Finally, the intense pain was transmitted from his organs to his limbs as if it was going to tear his body into pieces inch by inch. Although using the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar to cleanse his body of impurities, it was equivalent to his entire body being reborn. However, the pain they had to experience during this process was 100 times more torturous than death. Now, his master, the Moon Empress, had said that cleansing the soul's impurities wasn't as easy as cleansing the body's impurities. He knew that after he drank the suzerain lotus root powder and the nectar made from the suzerain silver stamen gold luster cassia osmanthus, he would not be able to drink it. It would be an unbearable torture. He had no understanding of the soul, so what would it look like after washing away the impurities on the soul? Lin Yuan could not help but look forward to it. The Moon Empress instructed Shi Cha, who was holding a bowl of assorted lotus root starch. Bring this bowl of lotus root starch to Xiao Yuan first, and then fill the hot spring with water. Shi Cha responded before bowing and retreating from the rear hall. She was busy helping Lin Yuan clean up and set up the hot spring in the pavilion. The Moon Empress told him some secrets about the Divine Wood Federation for a while. After a while, seeing that it was almost time, he walked out of the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace and headed toward the pavilion where he usually lived. There were all sorts of rare fays outside the Radiant Moon Palace. These fays seemed to have been released into the wild as they ran all over the Leaning Moon Mountain. Right now, there were plenty of precious fays playing outside the Radiant Moon Palace. However, he was not in the mood to look at the surrounding scenery as usual. Instead, he covered his stomach with his hand. He was preparing himself for another round of sweet torture. When Lin Yuan walked to the door of his pavilion in the Radiant Moon Palace, he happened to see a squirrel fay holding a nut that was half the size of its body and constantly knocking it. However, after knocking for a long time, the squirrel fay still couldn't crack the shell of the nut. At that moment, Lin Yuan's line of sight met with the squirrel fay's. When Lin Yuan saw this squirrel fay, he immediately recognized it as a healing-type fay, the pine needle spring return mouse. Those giant nuts were the pine nuts of the gold fay, iron pine, that was planted on the Leaning Moon Mountain. This pine needle spring return rat was only a silver fay, so it obviously couldn't open the pine nuts of this gold iron pine. The pine needle spring return rat was extremely intelligent and had high intelligence among rodent fays. When the pine needle spring return rat saw Lin Yuan rubbing his stomach, it looked down at the huge iron pine nuts in its hand. The pine needle spring rejuvenation mouse held the pine nuts of the iron pine and rubbed them on its fluffy big tail with reluctance. Then, he looked at Lin Yuan's hand that was covering his stomach and carried the huge pine nut to Lin Yuan's feet before lifting it up. It was as if he was saying, "I'm looking at you rubbing your stomach. You seem to be very hungry. I'll let you eat this big baby." Lin Yuan squatted down and took the pine nuts from the pine needle spring return rat. Lin Yuan had clearly seen the pine needle spring return rat's small movements. This little fellow obviously wanted to eat it, but when it saw him rubbing his stomach, it shared the pine nuts with him. Lin Yuan understood that a large part of the reason for this situation was that there was a lot of food on the Leaning Moon Mountain. However, he had to admit that the pine needle spring return rat warmed him. When the pine needle spring return rat saw Lin Yuan take the pine nuts, it turned around and scurried into the distance. It planned to find some nuts to eat on the Leaning Moon Mountain. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan urged the amber button-shaped source-type source sand on his sleeve to turn it into a wisp of fine sand. When this wisp of fine sand exerted force, it crushed the shell of the iron pine nut. Lin Yuan took this huge pine nut and threw it toward the pine needle spring return rat's running route. This time, the pine needle spring return rat immediately experienced the joy of a pie falling from the sky. The pine needle spring return rat was a little puzzled. It had just given out an iron pine nut, so why did it gain an iron pine nut? When the pine needle spring rat turned its head, it found that there was no one behind it. At that moment, Lin Yuan had already entered the pavilion. Shi Cha was waiting at the pavilion's entrance for Lin Yuan's return. Upon seeing Lin Yuan enter, Shi Cha hurriedly bowed and said, "Lin Yuan, I'm here. Your Highness, the hot spring is ready. I've also added some morning lotus dew in it. It can help you cleanse your soul in the hot spring, removing the impurities from your soul." The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth could not help but twitch. How painful was it to wash away the impurities in the soul? The morning lotus clear dew was the condensation of dew from the lotus leaves of high-grade lotus phase at dawn. Among them, the effect of restraining one's mind was comparable to anesthetics used in physical surgery. After Shi Cha left, Lin Yuan took the bowl of assorted lotus root starch to the hot spring and gulped down the bowl of lotus root starch that had been craving the suzerain silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. Then, he entered the hot spring. As soon as the lotus root starch entered his mouth, Lin Yuan felt a kind of intoxicating happiness. The lotus root starch felt warm and very comfortable in his stomach. This comfortable feeling spread from his stomach to his 5 viscera and 6 bowels before finally transmitting to his limbs. Lin Yuan could not help but feel a little puzzled. How was this not easy? This comfortable feeling could not be any better. However, when this comfortable feeling rose to his brain, Lin Yuan felt a chill run down his spine. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that he had become Crazy Dave, and there was a large wave of zombies frantically gnawing on his brain. This feeling was not the kind of pain that came from having one's skull split open and crushed. Instead, it was a piercing pain in the deepest part of his mind that was on the verge of being crushed. He could not find the exact location of the pain, so he could only grit his teeth and endure it. The pain dominated Lin Yuan's nerves, making him unable to even roar instinctively in the pool. He could only empty his mind and passively feel the pain in the deepest part of his mind. At that moment, under this extreme pain, Lin Yuan seemed to see the soul world in the deepest part of his mind that he had never pried into. Lin Yuan could only see 2 turbid illusory figures in the depths of his mind. Black-brown fragments constantly floated on the surface of these 2 turbid illusory figures and were peeled off. As the black-brown fragments were peeled off, these 2 turbid illusory figures became more and more transparent and solid. When Lin Yuan felt these black-brown fragments being peeled off again, these 2 turbid illusory figures became more and more transparent and solid. Lin Yuan felt that the memories of his previous and current lives were becoming increasingly clear. Even those fragments that were suddenly lost and smoothed over the years were all clearly appearing in front of him. Ask for tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 399. At that moment, Lin Yuan's mind was like a trotting horse lantern as he walked the path that he had walked in both lifetimes. The instant he finished walking the path of both lifetimes in his mind, Lin Yuan felt that the depths of his mind suddenly became unprecedentedly clear. This feeling of clarity made Lin Yuan feel that everything in the world had become refreshing, and his thinking had become more transparent. However, under that intense pain, Lin Yuan had already completely collapsed and did not have the strength to move now. The lotus flowers in the Radiant Moon Palace's inner palace's lotus pond had actually just reached the suzerain grade. They had just comprehended the willpower rune and woken up from their slumber. Their lotus roots being severed at this time would greatly affect their foundation. At that moment, the Moon Empress was pouring a bottle of dark green spirit liquid into this lotus pond. Once this dark green spirit liquid entered the lotus pond, the lotus phase that had just been severed immediately absorbed the energy in this dark green spirit liquid. It was to repair the damaged roots of these lotus phase when their lotus roots were severed. Moon Empress, according to your instructions, the amount of lotus root starch and silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar in young lord's bowl of assorted lotus root starch has been doubled. When Shi Cha said this, she did not understand the Moon Empress' intention. One portion was enough to cleanse the soul. If it was doubled, then the extra double would be wasted for no reason. Even if the Moon Empress doted on young lord, it would be a pity to waste such a good thing. The Moon Empress said coldly, "Well done. Well done. This extra portion will allow little Yuan to immediately recover the overdrawn energy in his body to its optimal state after cleansing his soul. At the same time, it can also form a layer of protective film in the soul." Shi Cha did not say much after hearing the Moon Empress' words, but she already understood that the Moon Empress did not just dote on young lord. There was no need to use such a good thing to restore the overdrawn body to its best state. He could simply eat some nourishing spiritual ingredients and recuperate for a period of time to make up for it. The layer of protective film formed in the soul was only temporary. Perhaps in less than a year's time, the energy barrier formed in his soul would naturally dissipate. Although it could withstand the damage to the soul once a year, Shi Cha still felt that it was appalling to use such a method. Even so, Shi Cha still felt that using such a method was appalling. Lin Yuan was weak, helpless, and pitiful as he lay in the hot spring. Even after an hour, Lin Yuan felt that there was still no obvious effect. This was because the process just now had exhausted his body too severely. Fortunately, he still had the strength to move his fingers. He took out the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar that his master had given him from his diamond face storage box. Fortunately, Lin Yuan had already separated the silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar. The entire jar of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar that could be called a bucket was divided into groups of 10 drops. Otherwise, he would not be able to carry the large jar of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar with the strength of only a finger. A small bottle contained 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar, and Lin Yuan felt as though he had come back to life. However, even if he consumed these 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar, he wouldn't be able to withstand it. Lin Yuan still felt that his overdrawn body had not completely recovered. This surprised Lin Yuan. It should be known that every drop of diamond-grade silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar contained extremely rich energy. Lin Yuan did not dare to imagine how much energy his body had overdrawn from the intense pain just now. He took out another 10 drops of silver stamen gold luster cassia nectar and drank them. Lin Yuan felt that his body's overdrawn energy had finally been replenished. This was when Lin Yuan began to try to enter the depths of his mind to see his soul. Lin Yuan found that he could not do it no matter what. Lin Yuan scratched the back of his head. Logically speaking, a normal person should only have one soul, but I have two. What's going on? Lin Yuan changed into his spirit chi clothes and went to find his master, the Moon Empress. He then left one of the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles for Mystic Moon. After some time, Mystic Moon would bring the tentacle to a more suitable location in the Divine Wood Federation. At that time, Lin Yuan could open a spatial tunnel from here to the Divine Wood Federation. Then, Lin Yuan left the Radiant Moon Palace. When Lin Yuan walked to the silver stamen gold luster cassia's side in front of the palace, the mother of Bloodbath jumped from the silver stamen gold luster cassia's treetop to Lin Yuan's shoulder. When the mother of Bloodbath saw Lin Yuan, it was surprised to find that Lin Yuan was different from when he had just entered. Although there was not the slightest change in appearance, his spirit, or temperament seemed to have directly improved by a level. This temperament that seemed to point to the true nature made the mother of Bloodbath feel that even if it did not know Lin Yuan and was not his path protector, it would also give Lin Yuan a natural favorable impression. This was because Lin Yuan's temperament of returning to the true nature made it very easy for fays to get close to him. After leaving the Leaning Moon Mountain, the mother of Bloodbath transformed into a human form and put on the cloud pattern mask made by Hu Quan. Lin Yuan also put on the mask with the majestic Sky City pattern on his face. The mother of Bloodbath's strange and pleasant voice rang in Lin Yuan's ears. Did you personally go to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce this time because it encountered some trouble? Lin Yuan looked at the mother of Bloodbath with some surprise. He asked. Didn't you comprehend the blood law rune? Why do you know mind reading? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the mother of Bloodbath rolled its eyes at him and snorted. If there was nothing, why would you bring a damn homebody out? How long has it been since you came back from the depths of the endless forest and stayed in the mansion? Lin Yuan had been communicating with Listen on the phone these few days and knew that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was facing the suppression of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce started as a chamber of commerce, but it had now begun to set foot in other fields. In terms of scale, it was more than 10 times larger than the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce that Listen controlled. It could be called a new emerging faction. Previously, Listen had heard that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce only had 2 king-class experts at its peak. However, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce had as many as 6 king-class experts. Among them, 2 were pinnacle king-class existences. Now, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce did not even have 1 king-class expert. This caused Listen to struggle at death's door under the suppression of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce without any room to fight back. Lin Yuan had previously helped Listen promote those 2 bronze/flawless phase to bronze/epic. It could be considered helping the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce survive a certain calamity. However, even if the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had left Indigo Azure City, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce was biting it tighter and tighter. Asking for tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 400. When Lin Yuan and Listen were on the phone, he could clearly feel that Listen was completely holding on to the current situation. However, it was undeniable that Listen was very motivated. Listen had taken the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to rely on him and had sworn an oath with a willpower rune. In that case, he would have to be responsible for Listen and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Soon, Lin Yuan and the mother of Bloodbath arrived at the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan saw a rather large white house in front of him. It was decorated very simply on the outside without any decorations. From time to time, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's employees would take out or move various face storage boxes. Ostrich Logistics exclusive couriers would then complete the online supply of goods. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce no longer had any offline resources. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's offline resources had been completely devoured by the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce through commercial competition. Fortunately, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources were very complicated, and the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce didn't know where to start. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the 2 employees who had come out to move the face storage box whispering to each other. "Old Zhao, do you think we can get through this? The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce is coming in aggressively. It seems like they won't give up until they achieve their goal. We'll just do our job. Anyway, we can't help. I believe the president will have a solution. By the way, did the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce come to poach you? Those bastards from the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce have come to me several times, but I've rejected them all. I've worked here for half my life. I'm indebted to the old and young presidents. No matter how much the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce offers, I won't go." Upon hearing the 2 employees of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce whispering to each other, the mother of Bloodbath said with some surprise. "The employees of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce are quite loyal." Lin Yuan shook his head. Even the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's ordinary employees were poached by the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. In that case, those who are still in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce should be people who are unwilling to leave or have other purposes for the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. The mother of Bloodbath frowned slightly. "Undercover." Lin Yuan's face darkened. Since the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has cut off the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's offline resources, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce can only make use of online resources now. The mother of Bloodbath said when it saw Lin Yuan's expression darken. "What? Worried about the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's future?" Lin Yuan shook his head upon hearing that. He was not worried about the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's future but about the safety of the remaining employees. The mass-produced objects made of completely jade-textured powder were simply in short supply in the market. If objects made of jade-textured wood were said to be treasured by the rich and powerful families. Thus, items made from jade-textured powder were the favorites of wealthy families with some background. Therefore, even if the listening heron Chamber of Commerce lost all its online and offline resources, as long as it was a Chamber of Commerce recognized by the Radiance Federation, it had the functions of a Chamber of Commerce. If he poured these scarce resources into the listening heron Chamber of Commerce, he would be able to let it develop again regardless of the obstacles. However, as the saying goes, the dagger will be revealed when the map is unraveled. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce had been plotting against the listening heron Chamber of Commerce and had already infiltrated the ordinary employees. This was enough to show how determined the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce was to destroy the listening heron Chamber of Commerce. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce crushed the listening heron Chamber of Commerce several times in terms of resources and strength. If they lost the patience to slowly nibble away at the listening heron Chamber of Commerce, would they use force? A loud noise exploded out of thin air in the quiet room. A middle-aged man with a full beard was slamming the table with his hand and yelling non-stop. "Big brother, I don't know why young Master Zheng is so concerned about the listening heron Chamber of Commerce. We've eaten all the offline resources. Only the framework and miscellaneous online resources are left, and I find them too thin. Do you think young Master Zheng is sick?" Another slightly older middle-aged man was holding a wine pot with a dragon beast engraved on it and pouring wine into a cup. Even his face, which was still calm after the loud noise, suddenly changed, and he shouted angrily. "Impudent! Is young Master Zheng someone you can talk to? How many times have I told you to be careful with your words and actions? Why don't you take it to heart?" The older middle-aged man glared fiercely at the middle-aged man with a full beard. "Big brother, it's just the two of us. If there were outsiders, we wouldn't say such things." The older middle-aged man shouted angrily again. "You should be more careful when it's just the two of us. Otherwise, if you say it's a habit, how can our Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce still receive young Master Zheng's resources?" The bearded middle-aged man didn't seem to care at all and immediately said angrily. "Big brother, the listening heron Chamber of Commerce is so thin and has nothing, and it's so hard to deal with. Why do we have to spend so much effort? We might as well go all the way and settle it cleanly." At this point, the bearded middle-aged man revealed an ominous glint. He was like a little bear that had been hungry for half a month on the mountain and was eager to hunt. The older middle-aged man was calmly drinking the strong liquor in his cup. He picked up the wine pot with the dragon pattern on it and carefully tasted it. He said unhurriedly, "We definitely have to use force, but not now. You don't always use force. Use your brain more. You still have a lot to learn." The bearded middle-aged man strode forward, picked up a wine cup on the table, and placed it in front of the older middle-aged man. "I'm thirsty too. Pour me some." The older middle-aged man took the dragon wine pot and poured a cup of strong liquor for his younger brother. "Aren't you curious why young Master Zheng is putting so much effort into the listening heron Chamber of Commerce that even you and I don't think highly of?" As he spoke, the older middle-aged man's eyes flickered with a calculating glint. At this time, there was a knock on the door, followed by a shout from the person at the door. "Great President, Second President. Elder Fei's news has come back." The middle-aged man with a full beard said angrily. "Bring it in." After the person who came to deliver the news handed in a paper envelope, he immediately retreated. The older middle-aged man took the letter and opened it. A satisfied look appeared on his face. The middle-aged man with a full beard moved his bare face closer and looked at the words on the surface. He was a little surprised when he saw them. "Big brother, is this the listening heron Chamber of Commerce's online resource?" The older middle-aged man slapped the paper envelope on the table and said. "Let's see how the listening heron Chamber of Commerce can hold on now. One night watch asking for tickets." End of this chapter. Chapter 401. The middle-aged man with a full beard picked up the piece of paper in disbelief. After glancing at it again, he asked curiously. Big brother, why is this a paper document? A mocking smile appeared on the face of the older middle-aged man. The person who spread the news is afraid of leaving evidence and doesn't want to lose his loyalty to the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce on the surface. The bearded middle-aged man coughed in dissatisfaction. Big brother, don't keep us guessing. Seeing that his younger brother was so anxious, the older middle-aged man said. Apart from Listen, only old butler Chienda, who has served the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce for 3 generations, knows such important news. Who do you think told me this news? The bearded middle-aged man was even more surprised. This Chienda is very loyal. I promised to give him 2 bronze/flawless phase and 200,000 radiance dollars, but he refused to tell me the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources. I asked him to name his price, but that old fart still wouldn't budge. How did you manage to deal with someone who isn't even afraid of death, big brother? The slightly older middle-aged man used his hand to rub the wine pot with the pattern of a dragon beast on it as he said in a calm manner. I got Elder Faye to capture Chienda's son and 2 grandsons, then I got Elder Faye to implant the mind-controlling silkworm goo larvae into Chienda's son's body. Then, I got Elder Faye to release Chienda's son. Just 3 days later, Chienda sent a message saying that he wanted to hand over the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources to me. Chienda isn't afraid of death, but Chienda is afraid that his son will die, and he's afraid that I'll attack his 2 grandsons. The bearded middle-aged man's eyes lit up as he listened. After listening to the older middle-aged man, the bearded middle-aged man couldn't help but say. Big brother, since we have obtained the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources, why don't we let Elder Faye take Chienda's? Before the bearded middle-aged man could finish his sentence, the older middle-aged man interrupted his younger brother's words and said, You've failed to live up to your expectations. How many times have I told you that credibility is the most important thing for the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce to develop its forces? Why haven't you understood? If this gets out, even the Zheng family will have scruples when investing resources in us, let alone other factions that will exclude us. The bearded middle-aged man habitually raised his wine cup and said, I remember Big Brother's words. I'll remember Big Brother's words. I know I was wrong. I'll fuck you up. When the older middle-aged man heard this, he slammed the wine pot in his hand onto the table. He felt that his beloved dragon beast wine pot was not worth looking at anymore. Big brother. Lin Yuan looked at Listen, and asked. You can't hold on for a week anymore, right? Listen's eyes were red from not sleeping for the past few days, and his expression was full of exhaustion. Listen up, listen, Lin, up. I won't be able to hold on for another 3 days. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce should have just grasped my online resources at this time. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce won't be able to swallow my online resources in less than 3 days. Upon hearing Listen's words, Lin Yuan raised his brows slightly. How do you know that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources have been lost? Upon hearing that, Listen's expression became somewhat pained and cold at the same time. Grandpa Chien has been supporting me for so many years, but when I went to look for him 3 days ago, he wasn't at the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. When he came back the next day, he looked at me with vague guilt in his eyes, and he didn't say much. Only Grandpa Chien and I know about the online resources on my side. Listen stopped talking. However, Lin Yuan did not speak after hearing that. Instead, he looked at Listen, wanting him to continue speaking. When Listen saw Lin Yuan's eyes, he understood what he meant and continued speaking. He continued, after this matter is over, I'll send Grandpa Chien away from the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to Indigo Azure City for retirement. In the future, all the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's matters will have nothing to do with him. As soon as Listen finished speaking, Lin Yuan raised his hand slightly. A platinum phase storage box landed in front of Listen. Lin Yuan said, there are 1,350 items of different sizes here. Without the online resources, can these items hold on? Listen picked up the platinum Fey storage box, and the fatigue on his face was swept away. Although Listen's eyes were red because he had not slept for the past few days, there was no change in his eyes. At that moment, Listen's eyes were filled with unparalleled confidence. These 1,350 items are equivalent to an investment of 13.5 million radiance dollars, and these items are top-notch resources. If I can't hold on, how can I dare to make a promise to let the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce become a rising faction in 4 months? The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth curled up. Hu Quan found 27 Class 3 Spirit Craftsmen, which is 70 more than the expected 200 items per day. You just have to develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce well. I'll solve the problem of military resources for you. Lin Yuan had already started the white-clothed followers' plan. Before the spatial tunnel to the Divine Wood Federation was opened, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was the best home for the white-clothed followers. Within 4 months, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would rely on these items made of completely jade-textured wood powder to advance into a rising faction in its current situation. It was unknown how many pairs of eyes were spying in the dark, and how many hungry wolves wanted to pounce forward and tear apart the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's flesh. He wanted to share the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's feast. At that time, if the turbulent Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce did not have the support of king-class combat power, the cold currents mixed with wind and rain would soon blow the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce into pieces. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen's eyes lit up, and he spoke quickly. If you can guarantee that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has enough combat power to support it, then I'm confident in letting the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce hit the threshold of a rising faction within 3 months. Lin Yuan did not respond to Listen. In Lin Yuan's opinion, even with so many resources, it was already extremely difficult for Listen to achieve the transformation into a rising faction within 4 months. In Lin Yuan's opinion, Listen's 3-month period was a little harsh. At that moment, the strange and pleasant voice of the mother of Bloodbath, which had been silent all this while, sounded a little cold. A king-class expert dares to eavesdrop unscrupulously. Does he really think that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has no one? Second update asking for votes. Staying up all night writing so sleepy I only finished typing at 5 in the morning. Boo-hoo. Asking for support. End of this chapter. Chapter 402. The mother of Bloodbath had spoken for a long time, but no one responded. Lin Yuan scanned the empty room with his eyes but didn't find anything. However, Lin Yuan knew that since the mother of Bloodbath had said so, it was destined that a king-class expert was eavesdropping on his conversation with Listen. At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath's voice sounded again. However, compared to before, Lin Yuan could clearly hear the strong killing intent in the mother of Bloodbath's words. Why? Do you want me to invite you out instead of coming out? All of a sudden, a black figure appeared by the window. A black-robed, white-haired, skinny old man suddenly appeared at the window. He was as abrupt as a bat that suddenly appeared in front of the window at noon. The old man broke the window with a kick, then jumped into the room with a high and mighty look on his face. There was an exceptionally ugly and ferocious-looking insect species Fey lying on each of the old man's shoulders. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check the attributes of these 2 ugly insect species Feys. Fey name, Mind-Controlling Silkworm Goo, Fey species, Silkworm/Thought Silkworm, Fey grade, Diamond, 4 out of 10, Fey type, Dark/Poison, Fey quality, Fantasy 2. Fey name, Blood-Toothed Cricket, Fey species, Wingless Cricket/Toothed Cricket, Fey grade, Diamond, 3 out of 10, Fey type, Blood/Poison, Fey quality, Fantasy 3. Lin Yuan looked at the attributes of these 2 insect species Feys and then at the black-robed, white-haired old man. This old man's strength is really not bad. One of the 2 poison species Feys is good at cursing, and the other is good at assassination. At the same time, they are both high-grade fantasy breeds. Among them, the Diamond 4/Fantasy 2 mind-controlling silkworm goo needed to devour a large number of hearts to enhance the curse effect before casting its curse ability. The Diamond 3/Fantasy 3 blood-toothed cricket was also an insect species fae that usually needed to drink a lot of blood. Such a combination of insidious insect species faes showed that this old man was not a good person. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Little girl, you do have some eyesight to be able to discover this old man's existence. After the old man finished speaking, Lin Yuan cursed inwardly. Although the mother of Bloodbath had an extremely strong foodie attribute in the mansion and was extremely friendly to the people in the mansion, it didn't seem to care about the mother of Bloodbath. However, it was undeniable that the mother of Bloodbath was an insect species fae. Furthermore, it was a spider fae, which was the cruelest among the insect species faes. The law rune that the mother of Bloodbath had mastered was the blood law rune. Only by truly understanding the essence of blood could one dare to say that they could see through the rules of blood. Therefore, if the mother of Bloodbath's subordinates did not bleed like a river, how could they master the blood law rune? However, this old man actually spoke to the mother of Bloodbath like an old monk hanging himself. The mother of Bloodbath stepped forward with a playful expression on its face. Hee, you called me a little girl. The black-robed, white-haired elder had long known that the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce didn't have a king-class expert. Although he didn't know how this strange masked woman with dark patterns of flowing clouds had discovered him, he didn't know what to do. But even if they found out, what could they do? They were just a bunch of trash. The black-robed elder's face was full of mockery. He looked at Lin Yuan, Listen, and the mother of Bloodbath as though they were three fun toys. Your ears aren't good at such a young age. Could it be that you're not a little girl, but a little sissy in women's clothing? Lin Yuan originally wanted to tell the mother of Bloodbath not to kill so easily. However, since the old man had spoken like this, Lin Yuan couldn't stop the mother of Bloodbath anymore. After all, dignity had always been the top priority for experts. The old man's words had obviously touched the mother of Bloodbath's bottom line. At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath suddenly laughed. However, that pleasant voice was filled with an extremely evil flavor. The frequency of this laughter was faintly like the hissing of a spider fae when it was hunting for food. The black-robed, white-haired elder felt a chill all over his body for some reason after hearing the mother of Bloodbath's laughter. Goosebumps immediately covered his whole body, and even the age spots on his face were uneven because of the goosebumps. An inexplicable sense of crisis appeared in the elder's heart, and he shouted, Blood-toothed cricket, kill this woman with the blood-poison thorn. The blood-toothed cricket was only the size of half a palm, and its entire body was blood-red. However, its blood-red body was covered with black patches and brownish-green thorns, making it very ugly. The blood-toothed cricket's blood-red body was covered with black patches and brownish-green thorns, making it very ugly. When the blood-toothed cricket heard the old man's instructions, it stomped its powerful hind legs and shot toward the mother of Bloodbath. At the same time, two fangs formed by blood energy formed in front of the mother of Bloodbath. The front end of the fangs formed by blood energy also carried green venom that emitted a dark black light. At that moment, the aura that the mother of Bloodbath had been restraining penetrated through its body and dispersed the blood fangs formed by the blood-toothed cricket's blood-poison thorn in one fell swoop. A kind of monarch's aura radiated from the mother of Bloodbath's body. However, this monarch's aura was only controlled by the mother of Bloodbath within the range of this room. At the same time, this monarch's aura emitted a kind of evil coldness. It was as if the bright room had instantly turned into a dark crypt for spiders to hunt. The blood-toothed cricket landed on the ground from mid-air and twitched violently. A blood-red luster flickered on the surface of its body, and a willpower similar to blood suddenly appeared on the blood-toothed cricket's body. This fantasy breed blood-toothed cricket is really compatible with this blood-poison willpower rune. It's just that it's really interesting to let a fantasy breed insect attack me with a blood ability. As soon as the mother of Bloodbath's voice fell, the blood-poison willpower energy was directly stripped from the blood-toothed cricket's body. It then slowly fused into the mother of Bloodbath's body. The mother of Bloodbath's body rippled with a blood-red luster. With the blood poison willpower extracted from the blood-toothed cricket's body, it fell from a fantasy breed to a Diamond 3/Legend Fae. The black-robed, white-haired old man suddenly exclaimed. A suzerain/myth breed Fae. The old man's voice was full of bewilderment and fear, and even his voice was trembling. The mother of Bloodbath stepped toward the blood-toothed cricket that had fallen to the ground and said, "You have some knowledge. You even know about law stripping and system control." When the black-robed old man made the blood-toothed cricket attack the mother of Bloodbath, Listen's heart skipped a beat. This old man was simply too familiar to Listen. This old man was the third leader of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce, Fei Qianqiong. Third update asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 403. Fei Qianqiong could definitely be called a veteran king-class expert. As the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's number 3 figure, he had a fierce reputation outside. When the mother of Bloodbath had suddenly erupted with its aura, Listen and Fei Qianqiong were equally shocked. However, Listen's shock was different from Fei Qianqiong's. Fei Qianqiong was in panic and fear, while Listen had a kind of pleasant surprise in his heart. Listen looked at Lin Yuan without a trace and found that he was sitting there calmly. The expression on his face had not changed in the slightest. It was as though the king-class expert's sudden attack just now was just a gust of wind and not worth mentioning. Previously, Listen had only seen Lin Yuan inadvertently reveal his foundation in terms of resources. But now, Fei Qianqiong had only shouted the words suzerain/myth breed Fei. This was enough to prove that Lin Yuan's foundation in terms of martial strength was even deeper than his foundation in terms of resources. Listen shifted his gaze from Lin Yuan to the mother of Bloodbath and the blood-toothed cricket, which was twitching and struggling on the ground. Although Listen had never seen a myth breed Fae using law stripping and system mastery on a fantasy breed Fae, he had heard his grandfather mention it. Law stripping referred to the law rune's willpower within the law it belonged to. It was a means of stripping from a fantasy breed Fae. System mastery referred to the dominance of a superior Fae over an inferior Fae of the same type. Listen did not know what kind of Fae the mother of Bloodbath's body was. However, based on the mother of Bloodbath's ability to strip the blood-toothed cricket's bloodline and system mastery, it could be seen that the mother of Bloodbath must be an insect species suzerain/myth breed Fae that controlled the blood law. Fei Qianqiong clearly felt that he had lost control of the blood-toothed cricket. However, the mind-controlling silkworm goo on his other shoulder was still under his control. Fei Qianqiong vaguely looked at the young man sitting on the sofa without making a sound. At the same time, he glanced at the blood-toothed cricket on the ground, which had its willpower rune removed and had fallen from its fantasy breed status. A trace of madness flashed in Fei Qianqiong's eyes. Fei Qianqiong did not know the identity of the young man sitting on the sofa. However, just by looking at the style of the mask on his face, it could be seen that this young man's identity was obviously higher than this suzerain/myth 2 Fei that had transformed into a human form. At this moment, Fei Qianqiong heard a strange yet pleasant voice ringing in his ears. "You've nurtured the blood-toothed cricket well. Even if it has fallen from a fantasy breed, this Diamond 4/Legend blood-toothed cricket is still useful. So destroy your spiritual energy fragment to release the contract and let this blood-toothed cricket become a wild Fae." The mother of Bloodbath's tone sounded as if it was talking about something very ordinary. However, these words were like an order to Fei Qianqiong, carrying the weight of 10,000 gold. Although Fei Qianqiong's eyes flashed with madness just now, he was already prepared to not walk out of this room alive. However, after hearing the mother of Bloodbath's words, Fei Qianqiong could not help but shudder. What was the difference between destroying the spiritual energy fragment to release the contract with a specific Fae and letting a spirit chi professional die? After a Fae and a spirit chi contractor formed a contract, in a sense, it was a lifetime of fetters. However, if a spirit chi professional unilaterally destroyed the spiritual energy fragment in his mind with a specific Fae, it would be equivalent to breaking the previous contract bridge with the specific Fae. It was the same as severing the bridge of the contract with the specific Fae. This would allow the contracted Fey to regain its freedom. However, if a spirit chi professional destroyed the spiritual energy fragment in his mind related to a specific Fey, it would be equivalent to severely injuring his own spiritual source. This kind of spiritual source injury could not be healed, which meant that the spirit chi professional would no longer be able to contract Feys in the future. If it was serious, it might even shake the contract with other Feys that had already been formed. It was not unheard of for a spirit chi professional to destroy the spiritual energy fragment related to a specific Fey and release the contract with the Fey. However, this kind of situation was generally when a spirit chi professional faced a desperate situation and knew that he could not survive. Therefore, he chose to destroy the spiritual energy fragment corresponding to the contracted Fey and let the contracted Fey return to a wild Fey. It was to prevent the Fey from losing its life due to the contract when he died. However, how could Fei Qianqiong be willing to destroy the mental fragment between him and the blood-toothed cricket? Seeing that Fei Qianqiong did not move, the mother of Bloodbath stretched out its hand and gently tapped the air. The moment the mother of Bloodbath pointed its fingernails turned as red as viscous blood. Fei Qianqiong's miserable howl echoed in the room as the mother of Bloodbath pointed its finger. This miserable howl was exceptionally mournful, as if it was suffering the cruelest punishment in the world. However, the miserable howl only lasted for a moment before Fei Qianqiong could no longer howl. His body constantly twisted into a strange arc on the ground. The mother of Bloodbath walked in front of Lin Yuan and said, "This old man still has a mind control silkworm goo that he can use. He refused to destroy the mental fragment obediently just now. He must still be thinking of using the mind control silkworm goo to do something bad." With that said, the mother of Bloodbath waved its hand and grabbed the chubby reddish-gold mind-controlling silkworm goo. The surface of the mind-controlling silkworm goo's reddish-gold body was very smooth and covered with dark red spots. Every time the mind-controlling silkworm goo used its larvae to place goo in the target's body to control the target's life, a dark red spot would appear on its back. The dark red spots on the mind-controlling silkworm goo in the mother of Bloodbath's hand were so dense that they were almost connected. There were at least 1,000 of them. In other words, there were still thousands of people's lives in Fei Qianqiong's hands. As long as Fei Qianqiong wanted those controlled people to die, he only needed to issue an order to the mind-controlling silkworm goo. Those mind-controlling silkworm goo larvae lurking in the target's body would drill into the target's heart. Lin Yuan looked at Fei Qianqiong, who was rolling on the ground with his body twisted into a strange shape, without the slightest pity. If the mother of Bloodbath was not stronger than Fei Qianqiong, the mother of Bloodbath would have died under the blood-toothed cricket's ability. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce had been targeting the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had always been in a passive position. Lin Yuan could not help but have doubts in his heart. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce was already a rising faction. It was more profitable to do something casually than to target the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Why was the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce still chasing after the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, which only had an empty shell left? Baidu, read the latest chapter of Beast Evolution Merchant Claw Bookhouse for free. Chapter 404. If the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce didn't have a life-and-death feud with the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce wouldn't be able to survive. Spending so much effort to target the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources was a loss-making deal. Now that the third-in-command of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce was in front of him, this was obviously a good opportunity to find out the reason. He looked at the mother of Bloodbath standing beside him. The mother of Bloodbath was playing with the violently struggling mind-controlling silkworm goo in its hand, exerting strength from time to time. The mother of Bloodbath watched with interest as the mind-controlling silkworm goo was slowly toyed with until it was half dead. Upon seeing Lin Yuan look at it, the mother of Bloodbath said, "Don't worry. Right now, this old thing is experiencing the pain of a blade made of blood carving on every bone in his body. There's no way he can resist at all." Upon hearing the mother of Bloodbath's words, Lin Yuan turned to speak to listen. You should have a lot of questions about why the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has been targeting the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, right? There's no harm in asking about it now. Upon hearing that, Listen's expression froze, and he looked at Lin Yuan with gratitude in his eyes. Lin Yuan did not say anything else. He just gently patted Listen's shoulder and gave him an affirmative look. When Listen looked at Fei Qianqiong, Listen's eyes had become extremely sharp, and his face was getting gloomier and gloomier. It could be said that over the past month or so, it was the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's ruthless suppression and fierce offensive that had almost brought the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to the brink of collapse. Without Lin Yuan's support, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce would have completely controlled the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources 3 days later. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would no longer exist in this world. With Lin Yuan's encouragement and acquiescence, Listen walked up to Fei Qianqiong. Listen had mixed feelings as he looked at Fei Qianqiong, who was struggling under his feet. Listen originally had countless questions he wanted to ask Fei Qianqiong. Ask Fei Qianqiong why the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has been chasing after the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and forcing it into a dead end. What kind of benefits had the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce given his uncles to make them leave the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce without even saying goodbye? However, all these words were stuck in Listen's throat when he was about to ask them. This was the first time Listen could look down on the people in the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce as a powerhouse. And this person was the third leader of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. Listen wasn't stupid. He knew that the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce must have some ulterior motives for treating his Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce like this in the past month. However, no matter how Listen thought about it, he did not know what he had that was worth the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce thinking about. Listen watched Fei Qianqiong struggle for a long time, watching coldly and not saying a word. When Listen looked down at him, Fei Qianqiong's eyes revealed a pleading emotion. At that moment, Listen said coldly, "Fei Qianqiong, do you have anything to say about the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce?" The intense pain made Fei Qianqiong unable to make a sound, but he still nodded his head like a madman. Fei Qianqiong nodded frantically. A blood-red luster flashed in the mother of Bloodbath's eyes. A blood-red luster flashed in the mother of Bloodbath's eyes. Although Fei Qianqiong was still in so much pain that he couldn't stand up, he could barely suppress the pain and speak. "I don't know why the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce is targeting you. I'm also listening to the orders of the two brothers, Bai Qinghu and Bai Qingxiong." Fei Qianqiong had just finished speaking when he heard a strange and pleasant voice say playfully, "Hee hee. Listening to orders? It seems that you're just a minion who listens to orders. In this case, it's useless to keep you. The taste of the blood carving on every bone just now seems to be too light. You might as well try." Before the mother of Bloodbath could finish speaking, Fei Qianqiong's last trace of mental defense collapsed. "It's young Master Zheng. The Zheng family's young Master Zheng has been making arrangements behind the scenes." Listen subconsciously asked when he suddenly heard young Master Zheng. "Indigo Azure City's Zheng family?" Fei Qianqiong hurriedly nodded. Now that he had already spat out, he had no more worries. "Although I don't know why young Master Zheng wants to attack the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, this order was issued a month and a half ago. Don't you know what your Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is being targeted in Indigo Azure City?" Fei Qianqiong felt a little wronged as he spoke. Upon hearing that, Listen's brows furrowed tightly. Lin Yuan could not help but raise his brows. Young Master Zheng. The Zheng family. During this time, Lin Yuan had also crammed in information about the Radiance Federation's large and small factions. However, Lin Yuan had only crammed in on the larger factions. There were too many small factions, and he had not had time to start flipping through the information. There was simply too much information about the small factions. Lin Yuan planned to let Genius memorize the information of those small factions. This was no different from Lin Yuan understanding the information of these small factions. Although Lin Yuan had only flipped through the information of the larger factions, however, Lin Yuan knew about the Zheng family. The Zheng family was one of the three major aristocratic families of Indigo Azure City. The three major aristocratic families of Indigo Azure City were equally divided, and their strength could be said to be evenly matched. The Zheng family was a thoroughly wealthy family and a veteran faction with a deep foundation. In terms of martial strength, all the veteran factions had emperor-class experts. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not have an advantage compared to the Zheng family in terms of top combat power. Apart from Endless Summer and the Mother of Bloodbath, which were the top combat power, Lin Yuan had almost no other combat power in his hands. Take the King-class expert for example. Lin Yuan currently only had one King-class expert in his hands. That was Hu Quan. However, Hu Quan was only adept at the spirit craftsman aspect. The contracted phase were also to support the spirit craftsman ability. Hu Quan might not even be able to beat Lu Jia in a fight. It could be said that he was still very weak in terms of King-class combat power. It could even be said that there was no such thing. In terms of resources, the Zheng family could be said to be a family in Indigo Azure City. Although it was inferior to the Gao family that Gao Feng was from, the Zheng family was a family that could be considered a third of the world in Indigo Azure City. However, when Lin Yuan thought about how the Gao family was able to provide resources like the island whale and the elemental shellfish, the analogy was feasible and he knew the Zheng family's foundation in terms of resources. Lin Yuan did not expect that taking over the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would cause such a big trouble. However, Fei Qianqiong said that young Master Zheng of the Zheng family was the one making the arrangements, not the Zheng family. The Zheng family was different from the Gao family. The Gao family only had Gao Feng as their only heir. It could be said that in a few decades, Gao Feng would have absolute power in the Gao family. However, the Zheng family had a large population. Among the younger generation of the Zheng family, there were 9 people who could be called young Master Zheng, and only 3 of them were direct descendants. Begging for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Hee. End of this chapter. Chapter 405. In any wealthy family, one's background was extremely important. The words of a direct descendant could represent the family. However, the words of a branch descendant could only represent himself. Fei Qianqiong, is this young Master Zheng you mentioned a direct descendant of Indigo Azure City's Zheng family? Lin Yuan's clear voice sounded in Fei Qianqiong's ears, and he did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. However, Fei Qianqiong was a little troubled by Lin Yuan's question. Young Master, only the 2 brothers, Bai Qinghu and Bai Qingxiong, have seen young Master Zheng. I've never seen what he looks like at all, so whether he's a direct descendant of the Zheng family or not. Fei Qianqiong knew that the young man who was asking him was the most important person in this room. When the mind-controlling silkworm goo was still under Fei Qianqiong's control, crazy thoughts flashed in his mind. However, the blood-toothed cricket was struggling on the ground and was not under his control at all. The mind-controlling silkworm goo was also half dead in the hands of that suzerain/myth-breed humanoid Fei. Even if Fei Qianqiong wanted to go crazy now, he did not have the ability to do so. It was only a split-second decision for a person to not be afraid of death, but when this decision was made and faced with the line between life and death, almost everyone would change their decision and become afraid of death. Almost everyone would change their mind and become afraid of death, and Fei Qianqiong was no exception. What Fei Qianqiong wanted the most now was to be able to live. After hearing Fei Qianqiong's words, Lin Yuan pondered. When he looked up, he happened to see Lisan's eyes looking at him. He was obviously waiting for him to make a decision. Lin Yuan knew what Lisan was thinking. Presumably, when facing a veteran faction, most people would not hesitate to abandon an empty shelf like the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. At that moment, Lisan was like a deer that had just found its direction in despair. However, this deer was worried that the direction he was looking for would regard him as a burden and abandon him. Just when Lisan felt that the air was getting thinner and that the air in his lungs was faintly stuffy, Lin Yuan waved his hand and threw something over. Lisan hurriedly went to catch it. When he held it in his hand, he felt that it was warm. At a glance, he realized that it was a wooden sign made of completely jade-textured chicken wing wood with the word, Quan, engraved on it. At that moment, Listen heard Lin Yuan say. In the future, I won't be giving you those objects mixed with completely jade-textured wood powder. Just take this plate and set a time every day to pick them up at the Spirit Craftsman Association. Listen held the tablet in his hand tightly. This wooden block's words indicated Lin Yuan's attitude toward himself and the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Fei Qianxiong suddenly held his breath. Fei Qianxiong could sense from this masked youth's words that he hadn't given up on supporting the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce because of young Master Zheng. This at least showed that the masked young man was not afraid of young Master Zheng. People with high emotional intelligence like Listen were rarely emotional. However, after hearing Lin Yuan's words, Listen calmed down for a long time before whispering, "Okay." After deliberating for a moment, Listen spoke. The only thing left of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in Indigo Azure City is an empty old house and a coastal sea with huge waves. Could it be that the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce is targeting this shallow coastal sea? Although this sea area is on the coast, the water level is extremely deep, and there are great dangers in this shallow sea. Listen's heart sank at the mention of this shallow sea. It was this shallow sea that had left the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's core member. Lin Yuan listened to Listen's words and felt that his guess was more reasonable. The listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was now completely an empty shelf, and it would be a waste of effort for the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce to occupy it. Moreover, it was a behemoth like the Zheng family. The only thing left of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce that could be called a resource was this shallow sea area. Thus, it was destined that only this shallow sea area might be something that the Zheng family coveted. Lin Yuan could not help but be a little interested in something that even the Zheng family coveted. Before the dimensional rift becomes active, I'll follow you to Indigo Azure City to explore this shallow sea area. Lin Yuan's contracted red thorn's ability to breathe underwater had not completely mutated. However, there was no problem for Red Thorn to survive in the water. He could not test how strong Red Thorn's ability to breathe underwater was in the manor's artificial lake. He could take this opportunity to explore the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's shallow sea area and test the limit of Red Thorn's underwater breathing. The last thing Listen wanted to face was the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's coastal sea in Indigo Azure City. However, upon hearing that Lin Yuan wanted to explore, Listen hurriedly said, "That's right. Young master, you can call me whenever you have time." At this moment, Fei Qianxiong's face was getting paler and paler. The more Fei Qianxiong listened to the masked youth and Listen's unbridled conversation, the more he knew. Either it meant that the two of them weren't talking about anything important, and it didn't matter if an outsider like him was present, but how could the content of this conversation be insignificant when it involved the Zheng family? In other words, the masked young man was not afraid that he would hear the secret. This meant that in the eyes of others, he was already a dead man. Because only a dead man's mouth could be the tightest. Fei Qianxiong hurriedly crawled 2 steps forward and said with difficulty, "I've already told you everything I know. Can you please let me go? I can swear on the willpower rune to pledge allegiance to you." At that moment, the mother of Bloodbath's strange yet pleasant voice rang in Fei Qianxiong's ears. This strange yet pleasant voice was filled with the taste of foolishness. "Oh, you even used a willpower rune to make an oath. That blood poison willpower rune tastes pretty good. It's a pity that the mind-controlling silkworm goo's willpower rune is of the dark attribute. Otherwise, I would be able to taste it again." The mother of Bloodbath's words caused Fei Qianxiong's body to tremble. "I can swear on the willpower rune to become a servant, and I haven't killed anyone from the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce." When Fei Qianxiong said this, he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He hadn't killed anyone from the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, but he had kidnapped the son and grandson of the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's steward, Qian De. He then used the mind-controlling silkworm goo to control Qian De's son before exchanging for the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's online resources. It could be said that he was the culprit who had caused the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to lose online resources. Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows. Taking in Fei Qianqiong could be considered a good thing for Lin Yuan at present. This was because Lin Yuan didn't have any available king-class experts. Even if Fei Qianqiong's blood-toothed cricket had fallen from a fantasy breed to a Diamond 4/Legend Fei, its combat power was still high. Moreover, Fei Qianqiong's Diamond 2/Fantasy 2 mind-controlling silkworm goo was still there. However, Fei Qianqiong had been a member of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce and could be considered Listen's mortal enemy. Since Lin Yuan had taken in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce first, he didn't directly respond to Fei Qianqiong's pledge of allegiance. Instead, he spoke to Listen, who was standing beside him. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce doesn't have any king-class experts now. Since Fei Qianqiong wants to pledge allegiance, keep him if you want. If not, kill him. Lin Yuan's words were light, but he was considering Listen in his heart. Seeking monthly votes and recommendation votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 406. It was easy to see a person's pattern from how they dealt with a matter. Usually, how big a person's vision was would determine how big a stall he could manage and how big a scene he could plan. As the saying goes, a person with a high level of vision must have the magnanimity to tolerate others. If Listen had a high level of vision, he would have accepted Fei Qianqiong. Whether Listen let Fei Qianqiong live or die, it would not change Lin Yuan's current attitude toward Listen. However, the higher Listen's level was, the more Lin Yuan would be willing to tilt more of his resources to Listen's operation. He even allowed Listen to carry out more comprehensive management of the external resources that Sky City controlled. When Fei Qianqiong heard Lin Yuan's words, an abnormal fear arose in his heart, and his body trembled like a sieve. Fei Qianqiong had always felt that he was a king-class expert. As long as he was willing to swear allegiance with the willpower rune, it should not be a problem for him to exchange his strength for a way out. However, this masked youth had casually thrown his life and death to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's Listen. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce had caused the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to become like this. If he were Listen, how could he let himself live? Listen had not expected that Fei Qianqiong's life would actually be thrown into his hands by Lin Yuan. Listen understood the ways of the world and could understand that Lin Yuan had not accepted Fei Qianqiong's allegiance because he was concerned about his feelings. Otherwise, a king-class expert would willingly become a servant. But that was equivalent to giving up everything he had. Such benefits were delivered to his doorstep, but Lin Yuan did not accept them. Listen had sworn to rely on Lin Yuan with the willpower rune mainly to find a way out for himself and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. However, Listen now had a deep sense of belonging to Lin Yuan. Listen looked at Fei Qianqiong and narrowed his eyes. However, before Fei Qianqiong could despair, Listen turned to Lin Yuan and said firmly, "I'm willing to take Fei Qianqiong. Fei Qianqiong is more valuable alive than dead." Lin Yuan was a little surprised by Listen's quick choice. This showed that Listen did not care about hatred at all and had always regarded Fei Qianqiong as a valuable counterweight. Such a setup could not be said to be small. Lin Yuan nodded. In that case, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce will have a king-class expert station from today onward. Lying on the ground, Fei Qianqiong, who was originally in a state of despair, felt that his emotions had flipped too quickly, and his brain wasn't enough to process it. Listen looked at Fei Qianqiong and enunciated each word clearly. "If you can contribute to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in the future, I won't treat you poorly because of what you've done before." Listen's words caused Fei Qianqiong, who was in turmoil, to immediately feel that the relationship between him and Listen had become much closer. After Fei Qianqiong used the willpower rune to swear to be Listen's servant, he officially became Listen's servant. He was also Lin Yuan's faction's first true combat class king-class expert. Lin Yuan stood up from the sofa and spoke. "Do you want to keep Fei Qianqiong in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, or do you want him to return to the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce as a spy? It's up to you." After saying that, he took out an ethereal jellyfish's tentacle and set up a spatial node here. Lin Yuan and the mother of Bloodbath then left the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Listen's mind raced as he thought about his future plans. He was calculating the 270 items made of completely jade-textured wood powder that Lin Yuan would pour into him every day. That was equivalent to a capital injection of 2.7 million radiance dollars. In 3 months, it would be a total of 243 million radiance dollars. Fei Qianxiong stood respectfully beside Listen. A ridiculous feeling arose in his heart. He did not expect that in just an hour, his life would change. He had even walked through the gates of hell. Fei Qianxiong stood beside Listen, but he did not know that Listen was already thinking. How could he rely on his spy and 243 million radiance dollars to devour the entire Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce within 3 months? Big brother, why hasn't Elder Fei come back yet? That old thing, Elder Fei, actually made us 2 brothers wait for him here. The older middle-aged man, Bai Qinghu, had a face as black as the bottom of a pot as he spoke resentfully. Will you starve to death if you eat a little later? When will you get rid of your bad habit of dragging people along? Think about what you should and shouldn't say when you have nothing better to do. The bearded middle-aged man, Bai Qingxiong, subconsciously raised the wine glass in his hand and said, Big brother, I was wrong. I'll fuck you up. Bai Qinghu's face that was as black as the bottom of a pot suddenly turned red, and he couldn't help but rub his temples. He felt the fire in his heart surging up, making his head swell. At this time, Bai Qingxiong saw Fei Qianxiong walking in, so he shouted at the top of his lungs. Elder Fei, why did you take so long for such a small matter? Fei Qianxiong was angered by Bai Qingxiong's words. What do you mean by such a small matter? Damn it, such a small matter almost took the life of my old bones. Bai Qinghu stood up and glared fiercely at Bai Qingxiong. Then, he went up and said. Old Fei, you've worked hard. Come, have a taste of the dragon tiger blood tendon wine that I specially prepared. Bai Qinghu enthusiastically pulled Fei Qianxiong to his seat. Bai Qingxiong talked non-stop while he ate his meal. When Fei Qianxiong was eating, he spoke to Bai Qinghu as usual, but his heart was very complicated. When he had been eating at the banquet, he had still been sitting firmly in the 3rd seat of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce, but he had now become a mole of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Fei Qianxiong had already sworn with the willpower rune to become Listen's servant, so he had no other choice. As long as he violated the oath, only death awaited him. At the same time, Fei Qianxiong had to do his best not to be seen through by anyone in the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. To Fei Qianxiong, his biggest flaw now was that the blood-toothed cricket had fallen from a fantasy breed. If Bai Qingxiong found out, he might not think too much about it. However, if the old fox, Bai Qinghu, discovered it, he would definitely be on guard against him. In that case, it would not be easy for him to do some things when he wanted to become an insider. If he was exposed, not only would Bai Qinghu and Bai Qingxiong not let him off, but he would also be punished. Young Master Zheng of the Zheng family would also kill him. Fei Qianxiong felt bitter in his heart. But at the same time, Fei Qianxiong also knew that it was time to perform his real acting skills. Fei Qianxiong remembered the task that Listen had given him and said to Bai Qinghu while drinking, Qinghu, our Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has too many unprofitable online and offline resources. Qinghu, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has too many online and offline resources that are not profitable. Why don't we sell some of them and turn to high-end luxury items? That way, we can make a profit. Chapter 3, Seeking Monthly Votes and Recommendation Votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 407. Fei Qianxiong's words made Bai Qinghu ponder. He was obviously considering the feasibility of Fei Qianxiong's suggestion. However, Bai Qinghu looked at Fei Qianxiong with a strange gaze. Bai Qingxiong was stuffing meat into his mouth when he heard Fei Qianxiong's words. Elder Fei, since when did you start caring about the operations of the Chamber of Commerce? When I asked you to manage the operations of the Chamber of Commerce, didn't you say that you only like to fight and kill without using your brain? Fei Qianxiong felt a little bitter in his heart. This Bai Qingxiong had a bear's brain, and he could easily find a reason to justify himself. But Bai Qinghu was not so easy to fool. Fei Qianxiong couldn't be bothered to deal with the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce before because Bai Qinghu's desire for control was too strong. Another reason was that Fei Qianxiong was more willing to improve his strength if he had the time. Instead of focusing on the operations of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce, Fei Qianxiong knew that it was a bit abrupt for him to raise the issue of the Chamber of Commerce's development. However, this was the task that Listen had given him, and it was also Fei Qianxiong's first step as an insider. Therefore, Fei Qianxiong had to say whatever he wanted to say. Fei Qianxiong couldn't be bothered with Bai Qingxiong's attitude. When Fei Qianxiong looked at Bai Qinghu, he realized that Bai Qinghu was looking at him with a scrutinizing gaze. Fei Qianxiong took a deep breath and brought himself a glass of wine. When Fei Qianxiong held the wine glass, he was brewing his emotions. After drinking the wine in one gulp, Fei Qianxiong turned his head and looked at Bai Qinghu seriously. Even if Bai Qinghu was shrewd, he was still caught unprepared by Fei Qianxiong's next move. Bai Qinghu never thought that Fei Qianxiong's eyes would actually turn red. Fei Qianxiong wasn't good at acting. The reason why he revealed his true feelings was because he was not an actor. It was because Fei Qianxiong had thought about how his blood-toothed cricket had been deprived of its willpower rune. The more he thought about it, the more aggrieved he felt. In less than 5 seconds, a few drops of tears flowed from his eyes. The more Fei Qianxiong thought about it, the sadder the blood-toothed cricket became. Fei Qianxiong said, taking advantage of this sadness. "Chenghu, I've been with you for a few years now. Although I'm a few decades older than you, to tell you the truth, I've always treated you as a brother. The past few years in the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce have been the happiest years of my life. Now that the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has been promoted to a rising faction, I thought that Qingxiong wouldn't be able to help you much. You'll have to take care of everything yourself. Now I'm also thinking that I can try to help you with some tasks that don't require much thought." Bai Qinghu was caught off guard when he saw Fei Qianxiong's red eyes. But then Bai Qinghu calmed down. Bai Qinghu was very wary and had never treated Fei Qianxiong as one of his own. He had never allowed Fei Qianxiong to interfere with the core operations of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. Even when Fei Qianxiong hinted many times that he wanted to meet young Master Zheng together, Bai Qinghu rejected him on the grounds that young Master Zheng didn't like to meet outsiders. It was because Bai Qinghu wanted to completely control Fei Qianxiong and use him as a sharp weapon for the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, if Fei Qianxiong climbed up the Zheng family behind his back and relied on young Master Zheng to develop in the Zheng family, then his Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce would lose a sharp weapon. Bai Qinghu could see that Fei Qianxiong's tears were not fake. If they were fake, a few drops would dry up. He definitely wouldn't have kept it like this. Bai Qinghu was a little surprised that Fei Qianxiong actually valued him so much. Looking at his younger brother, Bai Qingxiong, who was eating and drinking to his heart's content, Bai Qinghu felt that Fei Qianxiong's old bones were becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. It was just that Bai Qinghu felt a little strange to suddenly have a brother with white hair and beard. After some consideration, Bai Qinghu felt that Fei Qianxiong's proposal made sense. Although the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce had become a rising faction, it had yet to open a private faction territory on Star Web. There was also no clear direction for the operation of the private force. At present, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce still had a lot of heavy basic spiritual materials and ordinary phase online and offline resources. Online and offline resources for ordinary spirit materials were fine. Even if they needed a lot of manpower, they could still bring a certain amount of stable income to the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce every day. However, the online and offline resources for ordinary phase were different. Normal phase online and offline resources didn't just need manpower to take care of them. It also needed to be fed at a fixed time every day and had to bear the risk of ordinary phase dying. Dead ordinary fays didn't have any valuable spiritual ingredients and could only be used as meat to feed other fays. This kind of online and offline resources was already dispensable for the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce. Even though these ordinary fays online and offline resources could help the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce filter out many mutated fays high-quality resources every year, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce didn't have many mutated fays. However, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce could only resell these mutated fays high-quality resources. It was true that the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce would benefit from the Zheng family. However, the Zheng family strictly controlled the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's creation master resources, leaving the entire Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce without any creation master. As a result, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce could only rely on the Zheng family. At the same time, the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce did not have much use for these mutated fays. Bai Qinghu looked at Fei Qianqiong pouring wine for him and thought that he might as well give Fei Qianqiong a chance. So, Bai Qinghu said, "Elder Fei, don't touch the online and offline resources for the ordinary spirit materials. I'll leave the online and offline resources for the ordinary spirit beasts to you." Fei Qianqiong hurriedly toasted Bai Qinghu and said, "Qinghu, in terms of resources for high-end luxury items, what do you think?" Bai Qinghu refused directly without thinking. "I'll think of a way to deal with this." Bai Qinghu's heart, which had been a little touched before, suddenly became as hard as stone. He looked at Fei Qianqiong again and immediately became vigilant. The Zheng family's main business direction was high-end luxury items. Bai Qinghu could not help but think, is Fei Qianqiong thinking of letting me give him a chance to get close to young Master Zheng? Bai Qinghu had already made up his mind to let Fei Qianqiong help him take over more of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's matters in the future. However, he had to keep a close eye on Fei Qianqiong and not give him any chance to get on young Master Zheng's ship. Fei Qianqiong secretly let out a breath and thought to himself, "The task assigned by Listen is considered completed." Fei Qianqiong recalled how Bai Qinghu's gaze had changed from scrutinizing to intimate to defensive, and he only felt abnormally excited. For some reason, Fei Qianqiong suddenly felt that acting seemed more exciting than using the mind-controlling silkworm goo to control people's hearts. At the same time, he could not help but curse Bai Qinghu in his heart. "My big neck is wet from crying, and I cried so sincerely. I didn't even cry so sadly when my wife died. You're still on guard against me. See if I don't screw you over." First update. Asking for monthly votes. Asking for complete subscriptions. End of this chapter. Chapter 408. In the study room on the second floor of the Return from Faraway Manor. There was a huge wooden shelf on each side of the wall, and each small compartment on the shelf had a stack of information about each faction. During this time, when you had only sorted out a small part of the information about the veteran factions. This small part of the information filled half of the shelf. Obviously, these two shelves were not enough to sort out all the information about these large and small factions. Young Master, one of the Zheng family's 3 direct descendants, is a member of the Radiance 100 sequence. He has been busy with the S tournament for more than a month. This Zheng family's direct descendant has established a guild club and is fighting for the B-class guild club qualification this year. According to the S tournament's tight schedule, there shouldn't be time to arrange for the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce to deal with the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's plan. One of the other 2 direct descendants was born with a serious illness, causing his legs to atrophy and making him unable to walk. Thus, he has been recuperating in Indigo Azure City. The 3rd direct descendant is a creation master. The Zheng family has poured a lot of resources into nurturing his abilities as a creation master. Presumably, the Zheng family will not let a creation master who is being nurtured waste time on such a small matter like the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan did not expect that he had just come to ask Wen Yu's opinion on the Zheng family's situation. Wen Yu had actually grasped such detailed information about the Zheng family without missing a single trace. Lin Yuan wondered if there was a genius living in Wen Yu's head. At that moment, when you suddenly thought of something and said, the Zheng family's third lineage has been buying Indigo Azure City's coastal resources in large quantities since 5 years ago. But for so many years, the Zheng family's third lineage has been occupying more and more coastal resources, but it has never started to develop these coastal resources. If the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce has an offshore coastal resource in Indigo Azure City, it should be blocking the way of the Zheng family's third lineage. Lin Yuan could not help but ask when you mentioned the Zheng family's third lineage. What's the difference between the Zheng family's third lineage and the Zheng family? When you explained upon hearing that. The Zheng family is prosperous, and the main family is the direct descendant. The main family is divided into 4 lineages, and each lineage is a branch of the main family. The main family will selectively inject resources into the 4 bloodlines according to their development. In a sense, the main family is the real Zheng family. In terms of status, although the direct descendants of the main family and the concubines of the 4 bloodlines are all the young masters and mistresses of the Zheng family, the direct descendants have absolute authority over the descendants of the 4 bloodlines. Lin Yuan nodded thoughtfully and said, yes. Since the main family of the Zheng family would selectively pour resources into the 4 bloodlines, the relationship between the 4 bloodlines shouldn't be too good. When you said with a smile. The 4 lineages of the Zheng family don't fight openly, but they fight constantly in the dark. Since the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's matter is related to the Zheng family's 3rd lineage, then the 1st, 2nd, and 4th lineages should not have participated in this matter. After chatting with Wen Yu for a while, he returned to his room. Lin Yuan had only asked Wen Yu about the Zheng family to have an accurate understanding of possible enemies in the future. Lin Yuan had yet to have a clear conflict with the Zheng family. However, if the Zheng clan were to make a move against him, then he would have to deal with it. Lin Yuan thought for a moment and looked for Endless Summer. He asked Endless Summer to go to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and secretly stay for a period of time. He had poured resources into the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. The Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce was destined to be unable to bite off the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Since the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce could not bite off the Zheng family's 3rd lineage's goal would not be achieved. Even a rabbit would bite when it was anxious, let alone a berserk lion. After making the arrangements, Lin Yuan logged onto Star Web to harvest the gains from the blind trade of the flower brocade pearls. Lin Yuan found that the number of mid-grade strange flames he had obtained through the blind trade this time was significantly higher than the number he had obtained through the first blind trade. This time, Lin Yuan had exchanged 10 flower brocade pearls for a total of 127 mid-grade strange flames. This was 27 more than the last time he had exchanged for 100. Lin Yuan's amber button-shaped diamond face storage box now contained 30 flower brocade pearls that he had exchanged through the blind trade. He still had 170 flower brocade pearls in stock. The next batch of flower brocade pearls would mature again in the Spirit Lock spatial zone after a dozen days. Lin Yuan had not chosen to use the flower brocade pearls in his hands to exchange for resources with other factions. On the one hand, it was because Lin Yuan did not have any urgent material needs at the moment. On the other hand, Lin Yuan also wanted to use time to build up his purchase with No Loss Store's golden signboard. As long as people thought of the flower brocade pearls, they would think of his purchase with No Loss Store. Lin Yuan first checked his Star Web Store's fan club. He found that through the accumulation of 3 blind trades, the number of creation masters in his Star Web Store's fan club had almost reached half of all members. Moreover, the lowest among these creation masters was a Class 3 creation master. In the past, Lin Yuan had never spoken in his fan club. But this time, he took the initiative to send a message in his fan club. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, Group Welfare. 30 flower brocade pearls for sale in a package. The highest bidder will get it. Limited to group members. When Lin Yuan's message was sent, the purchase with No Loss Store's fan club, which was already very active, immediately burst into an uproar. Stream in the cloud, fuck. The group owner actually came back to life. Violent-tempered woman, congratulations to the group owner for saying the first sentence after creating the group. Unlocked the I'm not a mute achievement. Fan Ji, 30 flower brocade pearls. The benefits of this group were too amazing. Jealous me, so many flower brocade pearls are enough for me to use for a few years. Everyone, please take it easy and give me a chance. Time to take medicine. Being addressed as a big shot by a class 4 creation master is really fucking exciting. Qing Wanhua, group leader, what's the exchange rate for spiritual materials? If it was the market price, then it would be too much of a loss to exchange the rare spiritual materials. When Lin Yuan saw Qing Wanhua's message, he pondered for a moment and said, yes. The price of the rare spirit materials will be 2% higher than the rare life form pavilion's transaction price. If the rare life form pavilion doesn't have a transaction price, then I'm sure that none of you will take them out to exchange for this flower brocade pearl. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's answer, Lin Yuan nodded. Qing Wanhua, 2%. The group leader was very generous. Rare spirit materials were not cheap. Although 2% seemed to be a small amount. However, if he took out 10 million radiance dollars worth of rare spiritual ingredients to trade, he would be able to save over 100,000 radiance dollars. In any case, these rare spirit materials were all auctioned in the rare life form pavilion. He would be able to collect them in a year and a half. Over 100,000 radiance dollars were not considered a small amount. Lin Yuan noticed that Listen was chatting in the group, so he immediately added him. Second update button wishes everyone a happy new year. Hehe. End of this chapter. Chapter 409. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, listen, help me count the bids given by the people in the group and tell me the highest bid. After saying that, Lin Yuan lurked again. The reason why Lin Yuan would listen was very simple. It was because Lin Yuan usually did not have time to manage the Purchase with No Loss Stores fan club. Listen was extremely active in the fan club and had excellent members. In addition, Listen was one of his own, so Lin Yuan intended to use this matter to establish Listen's prestige and status in his fan club. In the future, he would let Listen help maintain the Purchase with No Loss Stores fan club a little. Currently, the Purchase with No Loss Stores fan club was rather harmonious. However, as the number of people slowly increased, it was inevitable that some discordant tones would be produced. When encountering these discordant tones, someone needed to adjust or forcibly manage them. Listen's talent was clearly suitable to take on this job. In fact, this was also Lin Yuan giving Listen a chance. This would allow Listen to take this opportunity to use the resources of his Purchase with No Loss store as much as possible. He could let the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce borrow a few wisps of upward wind. After Lin Yuan closed the list of the Star Web Store's fan club, he took out 10 flower brocade pearls and placed them on display in his Star Web Store. At the same time, he set up a blind trade for these flower brocade pearls one day later. The 30 flower brocade pearls that Lin Yuan had previously released in the fan club was just the first bait that he had thrown out. This bait could attract more attention while also making more factions and high-class creation masters eager to join his fan club. It also allowed more factions and high-class creation masters that needed a large number of flower brocade pearls to urgently join their fan club. One was to buy these 10 flower brocade pearls through blind trade to obtain the qualifications to enter the fan club. The other way was to snatch those silver usnias that were sold in limited quantities in his Star Web Store. The other way was to snatch those silver usnias that were sold in limited quantities in his Star Web Store. However, Lin Yuan had suspended the sale of the silver usnias in his Star Web Store. This way, those who wanted to enter his Star Web Store's fan club could only compete for the 10 flower brocade pearls through blind trade. The news on Star Web spread very quickly, and the news in the store's fan club was probably already in an uproar. The one day he had set aside was enough for those factions and creation masters who wanted to obtain a large number of flower brocade pearls to prepare. He intended to see how many unexpected gains he could obtain from the blind trade of these 10 flower brocade pearls. After the blind trade, Chimey should have enough mid-grade strange flames to advance from Fantasy 2 to Fantasy 3. The purpose of tossing was to attract the jade. Moreover, Lin Yuan had thrown out a real gold brick. Lin Yuan believed that the profit from this brick he had thrown out would not be small. Furthermore, if the profit from this brick was too small, Listen would probably become the buyer of this brick. Then, he clicked on the exchange message he had sent in the Star Web Store and checked the information he had received. Lin Yuan realized that he had received a lot of information. However, a large portion of the information was about what kind of resources he could invest and what kind of future he could provide. There were even people who scolded him for being retarded, saying that he had sent this message purely to show off. This made Lin Yuan rather speechless. At the same time, based on the feedback he had gotten from this exchange message, Lin Yuan knew that his purchase with No Lost Stores Foundation was being looked down upon. Otherwise, people would not have said that he had sent this exchange message to show off. However, Lin Yuan did not feel any disappointment. On the contrary, these 30 flower brocade pearls were auctioned as group welfare, including some of Lin Yuan's future plans. Lin Yuan believed that there would definitely be more king-class experts rushing to join his private faction in the future. After screening, Lin Yuan found that only 3 king-class experts had sent his personal information. Among these 3 king-class experts, only one of them met Lin Yuan's requirements. Among the remaining 2, one of them had only comprehended 2 willpower runes, and his main fei was very weak. Even if such a king-class expert obtained Lin Yuan's high-quality bronze fei resources, he would still be a weak existence among the many king-class experts. Even if such a king-class expert received Lin Yuan's high-quality bronze fei resources, he would still be a weak existence among the many king-class experts. In a battle, a king-class expert would need at least 2 stronger main feis to cooperate to be able to exert sufficient strength. Therefore, Lin Yuan had filtered out this king-class expert. The other king-class expert's main fei was extremely strong, and he had 2 power offense-type feis at the same time. In terms of strength, he was not much different from Fei Qianqiong at his peak. However, this king-class expert had put forward his own request in the message. It stated that he needed a bronze/epic lizard species fei. Lin Yuan could easily fulfill such a request. Therefore, Lin Yuan sent a message to these 2 king-class experts at the same time, agreeing to meet in his Star Web Store at 10 a.m. tomorrow. After sending the message, Lin Yuan went to the Rare Life Form Pavilion, thinking of buying a lizard species fei that was superior in all aspects. This was the request of the king-class expert who had 2 stronger main feis and was comparable to Fei Qianqiong. Lin Yuan needed to prepare in advance before making an appointment with him. This could show Lin Yuan's sincerity and also give this king-class expert a kind of guarantee. After searching in the Rare Life Form Pavilion, Lin Yuan found a lizard species fei that had awakened a trace of dragon species fei bloodline when it was at elite. Lin Yuan immediately bought this lizard species fei with the dragon species bloodline. He was prepared to enhance this lizard species fei with the dragon species bloodline before the appointment tomorrow. Young Master Zheng, Master just sent a message saying that our 3rd lineage has obtained the main family's 2nd young master's support to develop offshore resources. An old man with a hunched back that was almost bent into a right angle leaned on a walking stick and lowered his voice to speak to the sinister-looking youth at the side. When the sinister-looking youth heard that, his face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. Our 3rd lineage used 3 years and finally obtained the main family's 2nd young master's support. This is a good opportunity for our 3rd lineage to surpass the 2nd lineage, 4th lineage, and 1st lineage. There must not be the slightest mistake. Speaking up to this point, the sinister look in the young man's eyes instantly turned into ruthlessness. Since father's side is ready, I don't have time to let the Iron Wall Association and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce slowly waste time. Elder Nyo, make a trip tonight and let the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's manager become the dark-eyed scorpion tiger's food. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 410. The hunchbacked old man replied immediately after hearing the sinister-looking young man's words. Young master, I will do it immediately. After old Nyo finished speaking, he thought for a moment and lightly tapped the ground with the cane in his hand a few times. Young master, I heard that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's manager, Listen, has extraordinary talent. I wonder if young master wants to accept Listen as your subordinate. If young master is willing to reveal your identity to Listen, as long as Listen isn't stupid and knows how to adapt to circumstances, he definitely won't reject young master Zheng's recruitment. The sinister-looking young man, young master Zheng, was admiring the boundless night outside the window. Upon hearing Elder Nyo's words, he raised his hand and said without even turning his head. This matter involves the plans of my Zheng family's third lineage. Even if the person in charge of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is a genius, it's not worth me revealing my identity. Moreover, the person in charge of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce is just an ant resisting with an empty shell. After Elder Nyo heard the sinister-looking young man's words, he stopped talking and walked out of the room directly. With a wave of his hand, he summoned a black shadow and disappeared into the night with the black shadow. The sinister-looking youth's eyes were filled with joy. He was obviously in a good mood as he muttered to himself. I don't know what father sacrificed to gain the support of the main house's second young master. Now that we have the second young master's relationship, our third bloodline can finally be considered to have a legitimate reason to develop the coastal resources. In the ascending dragon city under the same night sky, the night was waning. At the entrance of the Ascending Dragon City's Creation Master Association, a woman wearing a Class 4 Creation Master's retainer crest spoke impolitely. My teacher said that if your iron bone iguana wants its bloodline to evolve, it is impossible to succeed by relying on the spiritual materials you brought to induce the dragon species bloodline. At the very least, you need a gold dragon's mouth orchid flower. The man standing opposite the woman had an obvious look of disappointment on his face. But soon after, the man's expression returned to normal, and he said, Thank you, Master Duanli, for being willing to help nurture my iron bone iguana. If I can find a gold dragon's mouth orchid flower, I will come to ask Master Duanli to enhance my fae. The woman wearing the Class 4 Creation Master's retainer crest replied after hearing the man's words. My master said that he received your payment before, but because you didn't prepare enough spiritual materials, he didn't strengthen your iron bone iguana bloodline. So, the next time you come to teacher said that you only need to prepare half of the previous payment. The man smiled bitterly and thought to himself. His innate talent wasn't bad, and it was in the direction of compatibility with lizard faes. However, he only had one main fae, and it was the defense-type lizard fae, the iron bone iguana. Asking Master Duanli to help him strengthen a spirit item had cost him 3 years' worth of savings. Even if he were to hire Master Duanli for half the price, he would have to save up for at least a year and a half. Defense-class spirit chi professionals were the shields in front of the team. However, with the current strength of his iron bone iguana, he simply could not bear the responsibility of being a shield in the team. Although the man smiled bitterly in his heart, he still spoke very respectfully. Thank you for Master Duanli's generosity. Please convey my gratitude to her. After speaking, the man prepared to turn around and leave the Ascending Dragon City's Creation Master Association. The woman with the Class 4 Creation Master's retainer crest pondered for a moment and said, That's right. Your iron bone iguana is not just a matter of bloodline. This iron bone iguana will not be very strong even if it has the gold dragon's mouth orchid's flower to activate its dragon species bloodline. I heard from the teacher that the bulging sarcoma on the side of your iron bone iguana's head is a mutation. As soon as the woman with the Class 4 Creation Master's retainer crest finished speaking, the man quickly turned around and spoke nervously. Didn't Master Duanli say that this sarcoma wouldn't affect the health of the iron bone iguana? Moreover, it's been more than 10 years, and this tumor hasn't changed at all. The woman wearing the 4-star retainer crest didn't mind the man's impatience and rashness. That's why I said that it's a mutation. The man also realized that he was too agitated and was about to apologize. The woman with the retainer knight badge said, The sarcoma on the neck of your iron bone iguana is the prototype of a newborn head. Teacher tested the sarcoma and found that the element of the sarcoma is different from the one in the body. It's fire element. If this sarcoma develops into a head, it can turn the iron bone iguana from an earth element fae into an earth fire element fae. You're very lucky. After the head grows, the iron bone iguana will directly become a powerful defense type fae. When the man heard this, his face immediately revealed an ecstatic expression. However, he was a little confused. Why didn't Master Duanli tell him about the tumor? Before the man could rejoice for a while, the woman with the 4-star retainer crest suddenly changed the topic. However, if your iron bone iguana wants to develop its head tumor into a head, it needs the elemental pearls produced by the fire attribute scorching elemental shellfish induced to mutate. The man's heart sank when he heard that. A gold-rank dragon's mouth orchid could be saved up for a few years by working hard and scrimping. However, the elemental pearls produced by the elemental shellfish were his. Although his spirit chi professional was at A rank and his fae was a fantasy breed, he could barely be called a king-class expert. However, many non-king class experts couldn't even defeat it. How could he dream of such an existence? The woman with the Class 4 Creation Master's retainer crest said very seriously. The elemental pearls produced by the scorching elemental shellfish are divided into many grades according to the purity of the elements contained in them. Teacher said that the elemental pearls that are useful for your iron bone iguana must be the highest heavenly maiden grade. The elemental energy contained in the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls is 95% to 100% pure. Even my teacher can't get such heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. What's more, if you want your iron bone iguana to grow a second head, you need a total of 5 heavenly maiden grade pearls produced by the scorching elemental shellfish that contain fire elemental energy. The man's hope that had just been born was immediately shattered. He couldn't even afford to ask Master Duanli to enhance a fae once, let alone the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls that even Master Duanli couldn't get. The woman with the Class 4 Creation Master's retainer crest looked at the man's expression and continued speaking. Teacher originally didn't intend to tell you this. I'm telling you because without the heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls for its transformation, this iron bone iguana's growth is already the limit. Seeking recommendation votes. Monthly votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 411. The woman wearing the Class 4 Creation Master's retainer crest didn't care about the bitterness on the man's face. She just continued to say what she felt she should say. Continuing to nurture this iron bone iguana will only be a waste of spiritual ingredients, which is equivalent to wasting your own potential. You might as well pour the resources to nurture this iron bone iguana into your other phase. The bitterness on the man's face became even stronger. He only had the iron bone iguana as his main fae. He had comprehended a total of 3 willpower runes, and one of them had been combined with the iron bone iguana to promote it into a fantasy breed. The other 2 willpower runes were flying around his spiritual energy in his spiritual spatial zone. However, even if he didn't nurture the iron bone iguana and nurtured other faes, since the resources he could earn were limited, he could only choose a bronze/flawless fae to contract at most. If he wanted to upgrade a bronze/flawless fae to legend, who knew how many years he would need to accumulate the resources? The man thanked the woman wearing the Class 4 Creation Master's retainer crest very seriously. Then he firmly walked toward the night. This world had always been difficult for poor families to produce noble children. From the first contracted fae at a young age, the children of the rich and powerful families had already opened a gap like a scar in the sky. Even if the poor children were lucky enough to become king-class experts, it was unknown how much blood and tears they had to pay compared to those who were born in the rich and powerful families. However, among the king-class experts who came from poor families like him would always be at the bottom. Zhou Luo had long seen through this world. Although Zhou Luo's heart was still very desperate, he was now calm. For the poor children, they always had to face troubles and despair on the way to growth. Then They would cross the hurdles brought by troubles and despair. It seemed like a life of seeking joy in hardship, but it was also to change fate. Along the way, Zhou Luo felt that he was a hero. In Zhou Luo's opinion, there was only one kind of heroism in the world, which was to recognize the truth of life and still love it. Zhou Luo originally planned to go to the Guild Alliance to see if there were any missions suitable for him. Suddenly, Zhou Luo thought of the application he had submitted when he had seen the exchange message from the small store he followed on Star Web. In his room, Listen was thinking about how to get through 270 objects mixed with completely jade-textured wood powder every day. To open up the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's development. In Purchase with No Losses Star Web Store, the various group members had quoted 30 flower brocade pearls. Listen knew that most of the people in the group were big shots. However, Listen was still secretly shocked when he saw the big shots offer for the 30 flower brocade pearls. Listen couldn't help but sigh. These big shots are too rich. At the same time, Listen could feel that Lin Yuan had tagged him. The big shots in the group had changed their attitude towards him. Listen always knew where his advantage was. Listen also wanted to build a good relationship with the others in the group. Therefore, Listen was very popular in the group. However, that was only a relationship where they could chat with each other. Now, Listen could clearly feel that some big shots in the group were obviously trying to rope him in. He wanted to use her to exchange for more flower brocade pearls from Lin Yuan. Since Lin Yuan had not replied to Star Web messages, many people wanted to get a chance to contact Lin Yuan through him. Listen did not refuse these people's attempts to rope him in and express goodwill. On the contrary, he was happy to accept them. Since Lin Yuan had taken out the resources for the auction, Listen naturally had to do his best to help Lin Yuan maximize the benefits of these resources. However, Listen also had to make good use of these derived interests to help the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's development subtly. Otherwise, it would be a waste of resources in this area. Listen felt that he had really let down Lin Yuan's high regard. At that moment, Listen heard 3 knocks on the door. Listen used his fingers to rhythmically knock on the table 3 times. Fei Qianxiong pushed the door open, came to Listen's side, and said respectfully, "President, I didn't drop the ball on my side." "President, I didn't drop the ball. Bai Qinghu has already handed over the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's online and offline phase to me to handle. When the time comes, please arrange how I should handle the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's phase." Upon hearing that, Listen asked with some doubt. Why would the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce choose to give up this kind of spirit beast resource that can screen out high-quality mutated phase? Fei Qianxiong did not mince words when he heard Listen's question. "President, don't look at how the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce has developed into a rising faction now, but it doesn't have a single creation master. Even Class 1 and Class 2 creation masters, Bai Qinghu, were forced to send them to the Zheng family. Bai Qinghu has always disliked spirit beast resources without the support of creation masters, but he has never made up his mind to deal with them." At this point, Fei Qianxiong could not help but praise his superb acting skills in front of Bai Qinghu and Bai Qingxiong. Listen said after thinking for a while. Since the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce wants to sell off the spirit beast resources in its hands, then we'll secretly take them. Fei Qianxiong recalled Bai Qinghu's expression when he had talked about the spirit beast resources and spiritual material resources. After the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's online and offline spirit beast resources are sold, Bai Qinghu will use the Zheng family to shift the business direction to high-end luxury resources. I reckon the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's spiritual material resources will be sold soon. While speaking, Fei Qianxiong admired the young man sitting at the table with phoenix eyes and a mole at the corner of his eye. According to what Listen had taught him, he chatted with Bai Qinghu for an hour. Only then did Bai Qinghu's idea of shifting the development direction of the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce to high-end luxury resources step by step. Otherwise, with just his acting skills and without what Listen had taught him, even if he could deceive Bai Qinghu, he would definitely not be able to affect Bai Qinghu's ambitions and thoughts through clues. Listen's fingers gently tapped on the table, making beeping sounds as he quickly calculated in his mind. The investment required for high-end luxury resources isn't a small amount. If Bai Chenghu is focused on developing high-end luxury resources, then he will definitely gather resources and constantly throw out the other resources in his hands little by little. Therefore, you must help Bai Chenghu throw out the Iron Wall Chamber of Commerce's online and offline resources. You must do it well. Only by letting Bai Chenghu taste the sweetness can he be at ease to let you handle such things in the future. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.